Welcome to the Party Wagon Podcast, where we talk about all things TMNT, past, present, future. I'm Eric from the YouTube channel Know You Grow Up.
And I'm Brendan from the YouTube channel Brendan's Rambles. And we're at the Big Ten now. We finally hit double digits.
No, it is pretty cool, though. I mean, I feel like it happened really fast. It seems like we just started this, honestly.
I can't believe it's already been since like right after Christmas we started this. It doesn't feel that long. It feels like we just started like last month.
Right.
So since we're at episode 10, we figured what better time than to do a top 10, because we've had a lot of top 10s we've wanted to do. And Eric, it was your idea that, well, how about every 10 episodes we do a top 10? And makes sense to me. So
yeah, so I thought about it, and I'm like, for one thing, that means every 10th episode, we don't have to think that hard about what episode we're going to do. But also, it is just kind of a cool theme to do our 10s on 10s. And honestly, I thought about it, the rate we're producing episodes, so we'll get out 26 in a year. So we'll only have to do 2 a year, too, which is really weird to think about, that at the end of the year, we'll be at 26 episodes. And a year just seems like such a long time.
Yeah. All the years don't seem like a long time to me anymore. Years just fly by. So it's like, I still think like, oh man, wasn't that just like a couple years ago that I graduated high school? It's like, no, dude, that was like 20 years ago. So,
yeah, almost. I do feel you there. I know what you mean. Like, I feel like the older you get, the more time just, I don't know, it doesn't seem to mean as much as it used to. Like, you just blink and it was like, oh yeah, that was 3 years ago, not last year.
Exactly. 2015, I still think of as like a recent year. That was like almost a decade ago now. So
yeah, I mean, even thinking back to the 2000s, and we're coming up on, it's gonna be 2024 soon.
Yeah, it's insane.
Really cool announcement to make. So we've had somebody actually correct us a couple weeks ago that we said was our coolest correction we ever got. So Chris Fawcett, author of Rad Plastic, corrected us on something, and I reached back out to him. I'm like, hey man, if you ever want to be on the podcast, you're more than welcome to anytime. And he agreed to do that. So that's really, really cool. So episode 11, hopefully if we can get the timing worked out, he's going to be on for that.
Yeah, we're going to be talking to him about, for anyone who doesn't know Rad Plastic, I'm sure you all know, but Rad Plastic is basically the quintessential like ultimate guide to the vintage TMNT toy line. And he's the author. So it's going to be awesome having him on. It's going to be our first interview episode. So I'm looking forward to that a lot.
Yeah, me too. So a couple caveats I just kind of want to talk about in that one too. So of course, we're going to talk about Rad Plastic. I mean, it's an awesome book. We have this awesome opportunity. We have to do it. But he also said he'd be interested in talking about some other stuff, like some prototypes and prototype collecting, which is a world that I know nothing about, because I feel like the word grail gets tossed around like it doesn't really have a lot of meaning. But prototypes truly are grails. I mean, we're talking about like one-of-a-kind items that, I mean, if you have them, nobody else has that in your collection. It doesn't matter if it's like because there's a couple different versions. You can get like the plastic cast prototype. There's the ones that are made out of resin and stuff like that. Like there's a whole bunch of different levels to prototypes as well, which he also covers greatly in detail in his book.
I have a story about how I almost acquired one, not a Ninja Turtle one, and it was for a different Playmates toy line. But I guess I'll do that next week when that's the topic.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, that was like 20 years ago, and it feels like it just happened. But.
Right.
But yeah, that's going to be an awesome episode. But we do have some toy news to cover. I believe the last podcast, we were saying how it was weird how NECA didn't do the April takeover this year for April. And they did it just in time. It was like the last few days of April, and they announced a bunch of April figures. One of them is a long time coming.
Yeah, so we're finally getting the redo of the NECA Toon April figure, which is probably, her and Casey are probably the most clamored for to get. I mean, I don't even know if people want a redo of Casey. I'm sure everybody would be happy to get the original Casey. But the April is one that a lot of people weren't happy with. And I mean, I don't hate the figure. I don't think it's terrible, but it just was not right. It just wasn't what I wanted. Like, she kind of just looks like a little munchkin and not this like 6 foot tall reporter lady that I kind of always saw her as. It was a good head taller than the rest of the turtles.
I'm not going to be that nice. I'm going to say I fucking hated the original NECA figure. That figure was awful. I never got it, and I never even felt like I needed to get it. But the Casey I still want. But Casey, even then, yeah, like you said, he could be done a little better. Yeah, the new April, I don't know how much taller she is. I have seen some people doing size comparisons, and it seems like some people are saying that she she looks like she might be about the same height as the old April, which means she's gonna have a real tiny head if she's that small. But I do like the sculpt so much better. Looks like most of it is new, and it's just proportioned so much better. Even her face looks so much more like the original one.
Yeah.
And I forget the name of the sculptor, but he's done he did like the Mondo She-Ra. You know, the Mondo Motu figures that come out that are, you know, real big and real detailed and they're super stylized.
Yeah, they're like the 6-scale ones.
Yeah, I've come so close to buying that Merdude before, but
he's cool.
or, I'm sorry, Merman,
right?
Merdude.
Merman. There's a couple different ones because there's one where he has like that kind of iridescent paint job too. I don't know if that one was like an exclusive, but that one is sick.
It is. They do a lot of like textural kind of differences and stuff. But the artist who sculpted the She-Ra, which like the face on She-Ra was so well done. It was one of the best like human sculpted faces I've ever seen on a figure. He's the one who did the new April faces for NECA, I've heard, I believe. So I'd say the only thing that some people are complaining about, and I complained a little bit when I first saw it, not really complain, was just kind of asking, was like the neck looked real long on the new April. But as you pointed out to me in a text message, like she kind of looked like that a lot of times in the cartoon, actually. So she did have a bit of a long neck. So the more I look at the figure, the more the neck doesn't bother me anymore, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, I still wish it was just a little bit shorter, but it's definitely not make or break for me. And it's just funny though that like, I mean, it seems like if they just made it like maybe 1/10 shorter, everybody just would have been thrilled. Like there's always has to be something to give people a reason to complain. I'm not saying you're off base on that either. I mean, it's kind of a long neck, but again, that is how the character is drawn quite a bit of the time. And I think it's more so just because she has that deep cut in a lot. And that's kind of what makes it look a little bit longer too. Cause like, I don't know, they just kind of draw neck tendons coming down far, but I mean, as a whole, I'm very happy with the figure, but I just do really hope it's taller. I haven't seen any of the size comparisons, and that is going to be a bummer because that's just kind of what bothered me about it. I want April to be tall. Like I want her to be at least a head taller than the turtles.
Yeah, that's how she was in the cartoon. And you'd think if they gave her, you know, giraffe neck that she would be taller. But I think honestly the neck, when you look at the figure on its own, just as a whole, the neck doesn't look long. It's when you stop and look at like the distance from like her neck to her boobs, it's it's so long that it's like then you start to notice like, oh yeah, that is a really long neck. But yeah, the main thing for me really is I just hope I'd like it like a centimeter smaller, but you know, I'd hope she's taller. I really hope she's taller than the old one, because that was just like such just a mess up on their part, because usually they're pretty good about the heights, like getting the heights, you know, equivalent to what they should be, where the neutrinos are real short and everything, and Ground Chuck and Dirtbag are real big and stuff. So it's kind of a shame to see them screw up one of the main characters' heights that badly. So I really do hope she is taller.
And it's just weird because all the other human characters are pretty in line, especially like the Channel 6 crew in general. Like I feel like Irma's proportioned pretty well, and so are Vernon and Byrne. So it's just weird that April seems to be the only human character that really is just kind of thrown way out of whack like that.
Yeah, it is weird. I do think she should be around like Vernon's height. I will say, as a quick side note before we move on to the other April figure, I'm so surprised with all of these accessory packs they've given us and stuff. They've never given us like a normal head for Irma. She always has that weird, like scared, shocked look on her face for NECA. It's either that or a rat. And it's like, why can't we just get like a normal, like generic Irma head, or a smiling Irma head or something? Like, or it would be really funny, it's like a flirty Irma head. That would be, there's be a lot of photography options for that. But yeah, it's just weird that she always has this like startled, like shocked, scared look on her face. And I feel like, can't we get a normal expression for her?
The other April that got announced is kind of an oddball. Like it's really random. It's a what if version of April, and you and I even kind of thought it was what if two different things. I thought it was a what if Judith Hoag was the chick on the side of the video game cabinet.
I thought it was just the woman from the arcade, like the original 1989 arcade cabinet, the one where like for some reason Michelangelo is wearing yellow. I thought it was her, but then like I saw the Judith Hoag likeness, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And now and she comes with an arcade cabinet with pizza face on it, which is, we'll talk about that. But everyone online is just saying it's a what if Judith Hoag was the 1987 April. I'm like, You sure there's no connection to the 1989 arcade game? Because that's where both of our minds went immediately when we saw it.
I really don't know how I feel about. So I'm not like mad about the concept, and I wouldn't have been aware of this either because I don't really collect any other NECA brands. But everybody says it's just the Ripley buck repainted with Judith Hogue head thrown on top of it.
Really?
And it is a very oddly proportioned figure. Her proportions are just very weird. She's very boxy and very hippie, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, no disrespect to Sigourney Weaver, but she's always had that pancake ass. So,
Right.
I guess, yeah, I didn't think about that. It's just the boiler suit that Sigourney Weaver was wearing in Alien, only it's painted yellow. Oh, that's weird. And NECA, they always find creative ways to kind of like the way Danny was like made out of John Connor.
Yeah, that's the worst reuse ever.
I never got the Danny figure actually. Does he come with the Sex Pistols shirt, or were they not?
That's the coolest part about it. That's literally the only cool part. Is this shirt is super dope. It's got the Sid Vicious one on it. It is super cool. But I mean, he's so short. Like out of all of the live action movie figures, none of them are really out of proportion except for him, and he's like greatly out of proportion. Like he's like way shorter than the turtles are. Like he looks like a child next to April.
That's really weird. Hopefully they don't screw up Kino like that. Hopefully Kino's good.
I mean, he's a fresh mold, so I mean, I feel like they're gonna do him right. Because I mean, really, that's like I feel like that's all they're sitting on from the second movie by the looks of it. If they're already teasing the third movie, I feel like there's not a lot left on deck for Secret of the Ooze.
Yeah, which they did tease the third movie. There's the scepter, interviews in the back of the little scepter and the link. So those are coming. I don't know who else they're going to do from there. No one cares about any of the human characters from that movie, but maybe we can get the samurai guys in modern clothes dancing to Tarzan Boy.
Okay, so that's exactly what I was going to say. If there was one random stupid ass 4-pack that I would want, that would be it for sure, without a doubt.
That would probably be the highest selling 4-pack you could make for that movie. So,
I definitely wouldn't mind getting that. And I mean, it just seems like they'll probably run back Casey, you know what I mean? And I wonder, it's really weird that like you don't hear anything about the Paige Turco situation either. Like, I mean, there's no word of her Secret of the Ooze April coming on deck, and then she was April in the third movie too. So I feel like that's a pretty big gap missing in both those two movies if they can't get her on board.
Yeah, it is weird. I mean, I guess as of so far, they haven't done like Splinter from any of the sequels because he looked different in pretty much each movie.
Yep.
So I don't know how deep they're going with like alts of the characters who aren't the Turtles and Shredder, but they might. And I guess it all comes down to the celebrity likeness. Like if the celebrity's cool with it, like I mean that's why Tatsu supposedly word on the street is it's happening, but we don't know yet. I'll believe it when I see it. But the reason we haven't had him so long is just that like he just isn't responding to them. Like they keep asking him, "Is it okay?" And they just don't get a response because he's actually training people in martial arts. Right. But yeah, this is weird though because this whole what if figure, it's getting a lot of people excited for a potential what if 1990 movie line where like what if Bebop and Rocksteady or Karai or something were in the 1990 movie. If we get figures like that, that might become my favorite Turtles line because that would be so cool to get like, Bebop and Rocksteady and Rat King and stuff like in the style they might have looked like if they were in the live action movies in the 90s. It's cool. And it's also because like it will feel like something fresh. It'll be nostalgic and fresh at the same time, which is something that I love. I love nostalgia. I love my nostalgia. But at the end of the day, I also like to see something new because I have all my nostalgic crap already. Like, look behind me. I got it all. So it's like, if they did that, that would be an awesome line. I'd be all in on it. But I don't know if this is actually a sign of that actually coming, especially finding out that she's basically all made out of recycled parts. So I don't know if they're like, oh, we're just going to go crazy with this now. So we'll see.
It could be a situation where they're like, okay, we don't want to dump a lot of money into this because we don't know how it's going to work. So we'll just tool up this random figure and see how people feel about it. Because it hasn't only been teased here, but it's also been teased in the Toon line with the Space Adventure Usagi and the Space Adventure Donatello as well. So it kind of does look like they are teasing like these what if figures from all angles. And honestly, it's a smart bet by NECA because eventually you're going to run out of characters. Like there are, the live action well is not nearly as deep as the toon line.
Oh
You know what
yeah.
I mean? So to keep that alive, they're going to probably have to do some fresh things. And the Bebop and Rocksteady, if they could do those on par with Toka and Razar, those could definitely be some of the coolest action figures ever. Like, especially, I mean, I just think Bebop, like his design, like we've seen it with Super 7, like there's so much cool stuff and detail that you could really throw in with him. And yeah, I just picture him just looking like Toka or Razar, and that would just be one of the coolest looking figures. I feel like even the Rocksteady would be sweet. And like you said, Rat King, and there's all kinds of possibilities that you could do with this. It is just kind of a bummer though that we might be getting to the end of like some lines though, you know what I mean? Like the movie line is gonna dry up soon. Once they do
Yeah.
the third movie, like I doubt very much they're gonna do like, I mean, maybe they will do Next Mutation, but I can't see that happening. So unless they run it back to the first movie and just start doing new versions of old characters, like it is getting to the point where, I mean, Turtles lines haven't really ever gone this far other than the Playmates line. Like no lines have made it to the depths that the NECA lines have up to this point.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even if they were to go back to the first movie, like, okay, we're going to do different versions of them. It's like, well, we already got so many accessories for the turtles where you can throw like hats and stuff on them to make them look like how they look in certain scenes in the movie already. And you already got, 2 versions of Raph, 2 versions of April, 2 versions of Casey. So it's like, there's honestly not even that much more to do. There's really like Tatsu. If you were really, really desperate, you could do like April's boss. I really don't know who else you could
And
possibly put.
I don't want that. Like I don't want Chief Murns either, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't want any of that. And if they make it, I'm gonna buy it because I have a fucking sickness, which really makes me mad. Like it really
We
so
got 2 shredders too, because we got the shirtless shredder also.
characters that really did it for me are the like from the first movie, from the throwback to Hamato Yoshi and Oroku Saki, like I look at those figures and they just don't do shit for me. You know what I mean? At the time, I was like, "Oh, this super deep cut. This is so cool." But I just look at these pictures or these pictures. I look at these figures and I'm just like, "Why did I buy 2 of these? Like, what? Why did I need a second one to keep in pack?" And that's when I was like, "All right, Farm Casey in April. I'm not buying a second one for these." And yeah, even that Casey, like I know it's a Casey, but that's the worst figure in my collection far and away. That wife beater, white trash Casey. If that was just the only figure you had in your room, someone would come over and be like, "What the fuck is this? Like, what is this figure? This white trash man?"
Yeah, it's a Kid Rock or something. Yeah, I still don't have that KC in April because I got.
You aren't missing anything. You are missing nothing on that set.
Ultimate April, then I got the Casey and Raph 2-pack. I've seen the Hamato Yoshi and Hiroko Saki like so many times. I actually just saw it yesterday in a store in Walmart. And I'm looking at it. Every time I see it, I'm looking at it. I'm like, I don't have these, but I'm like, yeah, I still don't need them though. And I just move on. I still haven't bought them. I just don't. Yeah, there comes a point where I don't need it. I don't need like, the regular Menthol kid or anything. Like, I don't need all these deep cuts like that. Because at the end of the day, like, I want the action characters. And I know Hamato Yoshi and Hiroko Saki are action characters, but you see them like in shadow in a flashback for like 2 seconds.
It's so dark. Like you don't even really know what they look like.
And then when you see the toy and you do see what they look like, it's like, oh, it's 2 half-naked Japanese dudes. It's like,
yeah, exactly. This is nothing special. Nothing special at all.
But I mean, they're good-looking figures. They look like what they're supposed to, but it's just like, I just don't need that. A lot of them, when it just looks like an average dude just standing on your shelf, it's just kind of like, why did I buy this? It's just an average dude. Like,
yeah, but it's good because it taught me a lesson that I definitely, I don't need to be a completionist and just get things that aren't really that cool just to keep being a completionist. Like I don't need to have that mindset.
Yeah, I have not been a full completionist, I think, with any of NECA's lines so far. There's still like every now and then there's a figure where I'm just like, okay, I don't need that. Like I don't need that figure. But I'd say the Toon line is the one where I have the sickness the worst. Where I've gotten some figures like, in any other toy line I wouldn't have bought Jersey Red or something. But like I'm in so deep on the Toon line, I'm getting everybody. So
and like, so I don't want to like branch way out on this, but it's honestly a video that I've thought about doing a couple times. Is for the Toon line, I feel like deep cuts just work a lot better than they do for the live action. I don't know why, you know what I mean? Like even with the deep cuts for the Toon figures, I don't think they're nearly as stupid as I do, like I just said, the Hamato Yoshi and Rokusaki figures. Like, I would much rather have the Jersey Red than those figures, honestly. And I don't even love Jersey Red.
I think it's just because they are cartoons and they are these exaggerated, zany designs still. Like a deep cut for the cartoon, Jersey Red does not look like a normal person. Jersey Red looks like a character. Jersey Red looks crazy. So it's like, even if they do these deep cuts, like, the 6-armed purple aliens and stuff, it's like, yeah, no one really remembers those characters, or they're not like anyone's favorite Turtles characters, but that does make for a unique action figure. So like,
Yeah,
I think that's the thing, is you do a deep cut with a live action property and it's just a person.
Yep.
And there's nothing really like interesting about it. It's like you went to the mall, shrink raid someone, like the guy from Harvey Birdman, shrink raid them and just put them on your shelf. And like, it doesn't really give you the same appeal as like, this crazy biker girl with red guile hair and stuff.
Right, guile hair.
But yeah, that's basically it for the action figure news.
Hold on, there was one more that I forgot that we needed to talk about. So 2 figures that got shown off. So they teased the packaging for the
the Ronin ones.
Yep, the Ronin Raph and the Ronin Leo, but they also showed the Ronin Raph and the Karai figure. So this Karai figure, when Super 7 first showed their Karai, I'm like, oh man, wait till NECA brings out theirs. NECA's gonna eat their lunch. I'm eating my words right now because it looks awful. Like, I don't know what is going on with that head sculpt, but it does not look like a woman at all. Like, that looks like a dude. Like, it looks like Alice Cooper if he wasn't wearing makeup. Like, it is awful. Like, I am shocked that this is coming from NECA. Like, they're usually pretty damn good with their head sculpts for the most part. I know even with the Judith Hogue head sculpt, a lot of people say like the expression isn't too inspiring or anything, but I've been pretty pleased with all the NECA head sculpts, and this figure just looks awful. Like, unless it comes in a 2-pack with, which I'm assuming this might be a battle damaged Raph and they're going to do a regular Raph, but yeah. I do not want this figure if it looks like this. It looks awful.
Yeah, I don't think I hate it quite on the level you do, but I don't like it. I think it's all around just kind of an uninspired figure. Actually, that's crazy people say about the Judith. I think the Judith Hogue likeness is insanely good on their figure.
I think it is too. I don't know why people hate that head sculpt too much. I think it's just the expression. People say she has like a blank expression on her face, but it's a very good head sculpt. Like, her hair, I just feel like is done very well and stuff.
I think like it's a blank expression, but it's like, it still has enough smile, like there's enough cheer to it. Like it does capture her personality. And if you went too crazy, it would be like, well, why is she making this weird face? Like, I feel like they got a good medium of getting her personality without going too crazy with the expression. Even on the Bride of Frankenstein one, it looks great. So, but yeah, this new Karai is pretty bad. Yeah, Super 7 definitely crushed NECA's Karai.
This is way better. And again, I don't even love that Karai. I mean, okay, I like the Super 7 Karai, but it's just not what I want for that line. Like, it's not the weird, crazy mutant figures that I just like about that line.
Also, yeah, I do think it is a tad uninspired too. I like the hits of red in there. It's kind of reminiscent of how she looked in the 2003 cartoon, but in general, it's just like generic ninja girl wearing black and red. It's not like the most interesting figure ever. Yeah, so it is kind of disappointing to see NECA do such a bad job with Karai, especially after they just did a pretty decent job with Lotus Blossom. So
yeah, it's very weird. Like, even just, I don't know. That's the only thing that really bothers me. Outside of that, she looks very Elektra-ish too. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I feel like it almost looks more like an Elektra figure than what I see when I see Karai.
I don't remember, because I know when she's in like the case in the last Ronin, when she's like like a vegetable in the case, she just has like a tight bodysuit thing on. But I forget in the flashbacks, is she wearing like the armor pads that hang down like she's like known for?
That's what I can't remember now either, because honestly, I'm trying to remember and I should have looked it up, what her face even looks like in the end of the Mirage run. I can't even think of what she's wearing in that. I mean, assuming, I can't even think of what it looks like.
Because the first thing, Karai's never had like a super dynamic design. I feel like she's always just been a bit generic, a bit like, if someone asked you to draw a badass ninja girl, that's like most people would just draw Karai. Yeah. I feel like she's never been too inspired her design, but the one thing I've always clung to that she has in most of her designs as like her identifying feature is kind of like the shoulder pads that hang down into like almost like bamboo looking like, armor that goes down. That's kind of the one constant that I think kind of sticks out about her design that I don't remember if she had it in the flashbacks in the last Ronin. It's been a while since I read it, but I know, like, again, I know in the present where she's unconscious, I know she doesn't have it. I don't know if she had it in the flashbacks. I don't remember, but to me, that's like the one thing.
Because I haven't read this, because the second issue is where she would have been like heavily featured, and I can't remember because I haven't read that one forever. Yeah, I'll have to read it again.
I cannot remember. Just go grab the book right now and look.
Right, I mean, yeah, it's way over there, but
I'm interested in these. I still don't own either of the Ronin figures or any of the 3 Ronin figures. I didn't get the red Ronin either. I don't own any of the Ronin figures they've done yet for NECA. Again, I've seen those a million times in stores. I've had a lot of opportunities, including the red one. I just saw the red one like a couple days ago in Target, but I am interested in the line. It's one of those ones that's like, okay, if there's a really long time with like no new figures, I might start grabbing the Ronin ones, but they're not ones I'm going to dive on immediately, like the Toon line or the movie line.
I didn't get the red Ronin figure, and I don't really have any interest in that one. And I'm definitely going to go in on this line because I don't know. It's one of my favorite universes. I really like the Ronin universe. The NECA figure. So if you ever just get one, just get the regular armored Ronin. Like, that figure is badass. Like, I really do love that figure. It was done so well. In the one without the unarmored one, I think you could pass on that one easily. Like, that's just a cool second figure. But if you have the armored one, I feel like that's definitely the superior figure for sure. But I do like, because I mean, like, I know the one you really like is the Donatello that has like the Raiden hat and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I think there's some cool designs. The Raph's really cool. I hope we do get a regular clean version of the Raph and not just the one where he has all the blood on him. But it is cool that you can like stick the arrows in his back and stuff where it looks like the cover of the comic. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, because Raph takes so much abuse in that comic. He gets like, we probably see the most, like, just the largest amount of damage done to Raph of any of the turtles.
Well, because the other ones are kind of killed unceremoniously, I feel like, as opposed to Raph's episode. Like, that one, it really gutted me that first time I saw it. I was like, this is a bummer.
Yeah, you're watching your favorite turtle get like horribly slaughtered. Donatello and Splinter had like the most artistic like death. I feel like their death scene was like if that could be in like a Kurosawa film or something.
Yeah. And a lot of people feel like theirs was rushed, but I feel like theirs was pretty cool. The only one I'm really not happy about was Leonardo and Casey. Like, I feel that one was just kind of like, the fuck, man, really? That's how they're going down?
It almost seemed like they knew, like again, I've said there's tons of people who love Leo the most, but I think when it comes to hardcore turtle fans, usually Leo is the least popular. So maybe they were just like, we'll just kill him off the quickest and crappiest, and no one will care and stuff. But I think Leo is one of the most popular turtles, except for extremely big Turtles fans. Then he's not. But outside of us, he's like the biggest turtle. But
yeah, and I feel like that's what I've definitely come to realize too, because the amount of people that love Leonardo has really shocked me since I've really been paying attention to the people that say that. I don't know. I'm excited for this line. I'm excited to see where it goes. But the Cry figure, I don't know. I hope they change that head sculpt because it just does not look good. It's very just uncharacteristic of NECA, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't really need Grandma April either. There's a lot.
That's one that I might pass on as well. I might just go with the Turtles, honestly, and we'll see how Splinter looks. I'll probably just go with the Turtles.
If you're not doing like, again, I that's just kind of how I've always been since I was a kid. If you're not doing like fighter characters, I just don't care as much about them. Like, if it's just, here's an old woman missing an arm and a leg, it's like, that's cool, but it's like, I don't have any like desire like to put that up. I'll probably just get depressed if I look at Grandma April every day in my room. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna die someday. It's
all right.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool line though. There's so much potential because there's so many like interesting redesigns, and the redesigns tell the stories of the characters too. Like, you look at the designs from the Ronin verse and you can just see like what this character's been through and like what state their life is in now and stuff. And I think it's really a good line to tap into for figures. But yeah, you're right. That Karai that's not a winner. So I guess they can't all be. I guess now we can move on to sort of related to figures, but So I was telling you that there was this thing. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's called, but I believe it's for animated movies. This big expo, private expo, like shareholders and stuff, where they show off trailers for upcoming movies and all that. And they did one for Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. And we haven't gotten the trailer. Apparently, it's a new trailer. It hasn't dropped outside of this expo. There's been some leaks and rumors about it. But one of them was we saw card backs to the action figures, which give us little character bios of the turtles in the movie. And we learned some weird things about some of the turtles in this movie based on these card backs. Like Leo is not going to be the leader. He wants to be the leader, but he's not, and they don't have a leader. So that's a weird. I guess it's kind of saying like it's starting before they're really the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
So I feel like this is kind of, again, not going to be their origin story, but they're clearly young here. I would say almost like 12, 13 by the feel of it, if I had to guess. So I would say in all the other iterations, they're probably closer to like 16 to where they are a little bit more established. So I feel like that's how the Rise series is too, to where Raph's actually the leader. It's not Leo, and Leo becomes the leader at the very end of the series. So they might kind of just be mixing all those worlds, but it would make sense to where if they're still that young, where they haven't really defined the leader yet. So I can see it kind of being like, because again, I feel like this is going to be a coming of age story for the Turtles the more and more we learn about it, to where this is like their first adventures out into the world.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think they're going to make Raph the leader, though. I think they're going to make it just where like there is no leader. Because Raph, they say his description is Raphael likes to break things. So it's like he's just going to be a hothead. They say his dream is to be a mixed martial arts fighter, which is kind of funny because he already is one, basically.
I guess also says that he wants to punch someone so hard they throw up, which is a dream of mine as well.
Yeah, they say he wants to punch someone so hard they throw up, but he's also a very emotional and soft guy. He just has a hard exterior. It's like, oh, he sounds kind of messed up, actually.
I mean, he sounds like a teenager to me, man. That's how I felt like as a teen. I felt like in most of my 20s up to my 30s, honestly.
That's how I feel just like waiting in line at the DMV. So, right. Michelangelo, Mikey's the comedian, of course. The weird thing is that he wants to be a stand-up comedian. I can see that, but at the same time, I just think of Raphael Knocks Him Dead from the original 87 series. I think of Raph as being, because Mikey, he's a goofball. He doesn't take anything seriously, but I don't think of Mike as being clever enough to tell jokes. Like I think of like Raph is the one who makes like, remarks and stuff about it. Whereas Mike kind of just makes light and goofy of the situation, but I guess he's going to be cracking, witty jokes in this movie, or maybe not, because they say his brothers hate his jokes. So,
which again, like that makes sense because he is just like he's kind of the dumbass of the group. Really, that's just kind of how it always is, and he's always just like even back to the '87 cartoon. That's how it was, and pretty much every iteration has kind of made him to where he's like the punchline of a lot of their jokes. So where Raph does have that more like sly sarcasm, which has always kind of been my brand of humor. That's why I've always appreciated it from. I've always liked the snarky, sarcastic characters. I don't know why. I've just always really related. I was very snarky and sarcastic in my younger years, so I got that. But yeah, I feel like all their tropes are kind of very well defined at this point, but that's the one that's kind of just been mixed over the years because I feel like the 87 Raph is really one of the only unique Raphs. Every Raph outside of that is to where he is kind of the hothead, the violent, crazy one all the time, to where they couldn't really have that in the 87 cartoon. Like they had to have them all be kind of fun loving. So but that's how I always kind of see Raph too, as the sarcastic, snarky one. And I would consider him to be the joke maker over Michelangelo, even though Michelangelo does have a lot of bad jokes.
Yeah, I think Raph was really the 1990 movie just changed Raph because that wasn't out yet when the 87 cartoon came out. I think once the 1990 movie came out, everyone was like, okay, that's Raph. That's what we want Raph to be forever now. And it worked because that's a great Raph. But yeah, the 87 Raph was definitely, I still always think of Raph as the one who has the smart ass comments.
Well, because honestly, so the Raph 1 out of 1 micro series, that was the 4th book that got put out. And that was really the first character development that kind of any of the Turtles got. That's the reason he left, is because he's like, oh man, why do I got to be such a hothead? Why do I got to fly off the handle all the time? So that was honestly the first real character development that was ever baked into any of the Turtles.
Yeah, because the first 3 issues, they're basically just Batman. Like they all kind of they're just like gritty, serious hero. They're all monologuing and stuff. And yeah, you're right. He's really the first one to actually get character development, like individual character development in the comics. So yeah, I guess it's weird. The 87 cartoon just didn't even pay attention to that. And they were just like, now we're going to do him our own way. I guess they could, like you said, they couldn't make him too angry and violent. So yeah, I guess that's where the sarcastic thing came from. I guess like they're like, okay, he won't fit in with his brothers in that he makes fun of everything his brothers do rather than he complains about everything his brothers do. So, but probably the oddest one is Donatello, and most of it's not. You know, Donnie is devastatingly smart and he's not afraid to show it. Like, okay, I get that. He's always been that way. But then his dream, he has two. He wants to be a game developer by day, which is like, okay, I guess I can kind of get that. He wants to be a K-pop star by night.
So K-pop is like one of the most popular things in the world, but since I'm a 36-year-old man, I know nothing about it. So I can understand that kids probably know a hell of a lot more about K-pop than we do. So
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't like, to me, it's crazy that we had in the 90s, we had boy bands and they're so played out right now, but it's all of a sudden come full circle into Korea where it's like the coolest thing in the world now is to have boy bands.
Yeah, it does seem like, I think it's something that's been going on. I don't know, because again, 36-year-old man. I think it's something that has been going on for a while, but I think it blew up like globally in recent years, or not recent years, like the past decade, I should say. But it's something that they've always done in like Japan had J-pop, you know, or was always like teen idols and like, you know, they get up in costumes and they're probably usually not even the ones singing. It's just a little weird that they made Donnie like I don't know if that's even going to be in the movie or if that's just like a funny little line for the toy, but like maybe he acts all like, you know, brainy and stuff, and then secretly he just wants to be a K-pop dancer. It almost seems like they're like, oh, he's a nerd, just make him a weeaboo. It almost seems like they're just doing that, like, oh, he's just like really into anime, and I think like they didn't know the difference between K-pop and J-pop, so they're like, just make him into K-pop or something. it almost seems like that. They're like, oh, he's like an anime nerd or something. So I don't know if that's what they're doing, but because a lot of people like K-pop now, but
well, maybe it's going to be like this dark secret that he like hides from all of his brothers and stuff like that too, and they're going to walk in on him and he's going to be practicing his K-pop stuff in the mirror.
Yeah, and I can imagine Raph will make fun of him for it, but
well, because also, so Donnie's the one that sounds like he hasn't hit puberty yet, too, right? He's the one that has a real high voice. Yeah, so
yeah, he sounds like he's 10.
Yeah.
You had the theory that he's going to hit puberty during the movie, and he's going to get a real deep voice at some point. That would be funny if that did happen. There's been some other rumors and stuff. I haven't really been looking into them. There's been some, you know, images of the Superfly figure and the Leatherhead figure. You can get a little better view of them and stuff. But for the most part, there's nothing that's like definitive fact that's come out. So I'm not going to, you know, just go down a list of rumors and stuff, or we'll be here all day. So that's really all there is to talk about the new movie. Before we go on to our main category, though, there is some comic news. Actually, quite a lot of comic news to cover, though.
On top of all the series going right now. So we'll recap them. There's the IDW ongoing series right now. There's The Last Ronin Lost Years, which is a totally different universe that's going on right now. They're doing an Usagi Yojimbo crossover right now. They're doing a Power Rangers crossover right now with Boom Studios. There's a Street Fighter crossover that's about to come out, and also a Stranger Things crossover that's about to come out, as well as a new ongoing series that's about to come out, which was based off a mini series that they did last year, which is like a theoretical continuation of the 87 cartoon, to where it's supposed to be set between, would it be season 7 and 8? So it's before Red Sky, after season 7 is where this is theoretically supposed to be set. So it's going to be an ongoing series. And if you haven't, you can pick up the trade paperback of the original one here soon. And actually, this Saturday is Free Comic Book Day, and you can get a free issue of the first issue of the animated or the cartoon miniseries comic book this Saturday if you go to your local comic shop, which is really cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to check when there's a comic shop about a town over from me. I'll have to check it
Free
out.
Comic Book Day. That's the good one this year. It's the first issue of the miniseries, the Saturday Morning Adventures is what. Yeah, Saturday Morning Adventures is what that's called.
Yeah, because I haven't read any of these, as I've said, you know, multiple times now. I don't follow the comics too much. I read Ronin. I read a lot of the original Mirage stuff years ago, but in general, I don't really follow the comics. So I didn't read the '87 Fred Wolf continuation, but I would be super interested in doing that because the artwork looks awesome, and it's like more of what we actually would have wanted back in the day instead of, I know some people like the Red Sky stuff, but like most people who checked out on that show, like when we did before it became the Red Sky series, we don't really have any affinity for the Red Sky series. So it would be cool to see more of what we loved as kids kind of like, continued today. And that's cool to hear it's ongoing, that it was popular enough that people just still want to see more stories of those turtles. They're just those, like, our turtles from when we were kids are still so big today. That's so cool.
And what's funny is IDW started it with G.I. Joe. They did a G.I. Joe Saturday Morning Adventures, and they did not get an ongoing series from there. But I heard Joe, I think Hasbro's taken their property somewhere else. I could be wrong, but I think they're leaving IDW. But yeah, it is really cool because everybody was really hyped on that series. And so the miniseries, everything was episodic too. Like each story was kind of its own contained adventure. So I don't know if this is going to be more of like serialized story. I wonder if this is going to be a little bit more serialized than those were. But regardless, it is a very, very, very good feeling comic if you want more animated series from the '87 series. It fits that tone very, very well. It's a high recommend for me, and it is just it's a lot of fun. Like, it's not real serious, it's goofy like the cartoon, and it is just more of what we wanted.
Cool, that's awesome. I've seen Rat King's been in it and stuff, but
yep. I think he's gonna be in the next coming series a big player in what's coming up right away. I can't remember, I looked at it a while ago, but
they're gonna do Armageddon game '87 version.
Right.
But the one that I'm a little like intrigued about, a little confused about, so we'll get to the Street Fighter one in a second, but the Stranger Things one. So I love Stranger Things. Stranger Things is a great show. It's one of the only reasons I still even go to Netflix. It's Cobra Kai and Stranger Things, like the only reasons I even go to go. But Stranger Things, I guess, like, stuff like Street Fighter has had crossovers all the time. They've hung out with Wolverine and Spider-Man and all that. And Turtles, they usually cross over with like Power Rangers and Batman and all these superhero things. Stranger Things seems so like not grounded because it's so weird, but like it's so strange, I guess. It feels grounded. These are just like normal kids going through normal kid problems and stuff in like, Hawkins, America. It's like a little small town America. And it almost feels like, okay, I know this is probably a different, continuity. So this is like a different version of Lucas and a different version of Dustin and stuff. But to me, I can't think of there being different versions of the Stranger Things kids because they've only had the one universe, whereas there's been a million Turtles. So to me, it's like, so where does this fit into the Stranger Things story? So like season 5 ends with like, 11 has to fight Vecna and Max is like in a coma and everything. And it's like, so do they just like run off for a week and they hang out in New York and meet the Turtles and like do this and then go back to Hawkins and have the fight of their life? Or is this like, I know it's a complete what if story, but I guess what I'm saying is that Stranger Things, those characters feel like real people so much that it feels weird almost to do something like this with them.
So I'm pretty sure because this is a crossover with Dark Horse, so I'm pretty sure Dark Horse is doing Stranger Things comics, which I know nothing about. I've never read them, but I'm pretty sure that is a thing. So I'm assuming it's its own reality entirely, but I have no idea what goes on in those comics. So the one thing I do know, because I read like the synopsis, is that the Stranger Things crew is going to New York to get away from all their problems, but there's just more problems there. So
that's kind of funny because the problems in Stranger Things are the kind of things you can't just like leave alone for a bit. It's like, yeah, let's just move away, let all those crazy upside down demons come into our world and kill everybody. It's like, we'll come back and deal with it later.
Yeah, it seems like Eleven's really the only one that can do anything. So if she's not around, they're in trouble.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's interesting. And then I was just saying before we did the started doing the podcast there's this weird thing going on where we're getting comic crossovers announced now for all of the crossovers that Playmates Toys did last year. So they did Street Fighter and Ninja Turtles. Now we're getting a Street Fighter Ninja Turtles comic crossover. They did Stranger Things and Ninja Turtles, and now we're getting a Stranger Things and Ninja Turtles crossover. I want my Cobra Kai crossover personally. Yeah, it's weird. I almost wonder if Playmates knew, if they were given a heads up, like, okay, there's going to be a crossover with these characters, make some promotional figures. If they were meant to be promotional figures, That's a really bad promotion because they came out like a year before the comics were even announced. So like no one's gonna even know they're related.
So that's kind of like, because I didn't even realize that until you said it, but you're right. They're exactly on point with those two sets. And it does just seem like the marketing was off there, if that was their original intent, or if they just had these weird licenses and then they're like, okay, let's just run with this and do the comics. But yeah, they're very strange crossovers. It's weird that they didn't run them at the same time. And if they did a Cobra Kai crossover, I don't even know how they would make that one work. Because I feel like the Street Fighter one, they're already fighting in a tournament. I'm pretty sure that's what's happening.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what they could possibly do with Cobra Kai. And I don't even know if there's a Cobra Kai comic going. But
because I mean, it makes sense for Street Fighter because they're all like super powered. You know, they all like lightning and fire powers and crazy stuff. Cobra Kai, like they're just people,
just high school kids doing karate. That's all it is.
So it's like, yeah, like in Stranger Things, they're just kids except for 11. But like if a threat shows up, it's a big threat that the Turtles could deal with. But in Cobra Kai, the Turtles could just body everybody. Like they could just take everyone out. So I don't know. But at the same time, it's like, I imagine like Raph hanging out with like Johnny Lawrence. Like that would be so fun.
Oh, dude. Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Like, or even hanging out with Miguel, like the kid that Johnny was training. There's so many crossovers you could do, just like, have Leo and Danny LaRusso hanging out and stuff. And it would be a lot of fun. But yes, story-wise, I don't really know like what the plot could be. Because it's like, oh crap, like, Krang and Bebop and Rocksteady are here. Go forth, high school kids, fight them. It's like they're all gonna die. So I don't know, but yeah, it's I'm curious to see what they do. I'm curious. I didn't even hear anything about the Street Fighter story. You said it's a tournament.
Yeah, that's all I read again is a synopsis for that. That's what it sounds like, because I had the Street Fighter ones on deck at my comic shop. I don't even know if the Stranger Things ones have been put up yet. So I'll get that story. Clearly, I'm going to have to read it so I can let you know what goes on. But I mean, I feel like the Turtles they are so hot right now. Like, I've never seen any comic do 4 crossovers at the same time before. So
usually
everybody wants a piece of the Turtles. Everybody making comics. Everybody making action figures. Like, I don't know. I'm afraid to say it, but I feel like we're at the pinnacle right now. Like, I don't see how it could get much steeper than this outside of if we get that live action movie sometime in the future.
The only thing that could possibly make the Turtles crash and burn right now is if this Mutant Mayhem movie fucking sucks.
And that's honestly my biggest fear is that, and again, I don't think it's gonna suck. I think a lot of people, it's not gonna be what they wanted, but we're on a pretty good roll. Like, I mean, I don't know. I have high hopes. I'm not going to say high hopes for it, but I feel like it's going to do just good enough. But I feel like a lot of the mainstream steam is going to probably die down a bit. I think if it does well, it'll have like a big boost for the next coming month or so. But I think that's going to be it, unless they announce another one and get it out real soon. Like I said, I feel like 2023 is going to be looked back as the pinnacle year, and I'm afraid everything's just going to kind of slide downhill from here.
That's your bi-weekly dose
Nostradamus prediction right there.
Pessimistic predictions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Wouldn't that be great if the topic we do a podcast about just suddenly just dries the fuck up in a year?
Well, I mean, let's be real. It's not like casuals are listening to us anyway. Like, unless you're freaking eating and pissing and shitting Ninja Turtles like we do, you're probably not listening to this podcast. So
I will say, though, actually, to play devil's advocate and counter what I just said about if the Seth Rogen movie fails, the Michael Bay movies were hated by the Ninja Turtle community. I like the second one for what it is, but mostly, especially that first one, was unanimously hated by Ninja Turtle fans, and most people hate the second one. But Turtles still stayed huge. I mean, right after that second movie, we started getting like the NECA figures and stuff. So it's like, I don't know I think like the legacy of the brand is so strong, especially since we have the NECA figures and the new 87 comic and like the Shredder's Revenge and the Cowabunga collection and all this stuff, that there are like 8-year-old kids playing Shredder's Revenge and Cowabunga collection and watching reruns of the 87 cartoon their parents have and stuff. I think the legacy of the brand is so strong that if a new iteration bombs, it might not even affect it, honestly. And obviously it's not going to be this big forever. Like, something's going to make it go down, but I don't even know if even if the movie was a huge bomb, I don't know if it even could honestly have too big of an effect on Turtles right now.
Like I said, I think Turtles just has a big hardcore community right now, and I don't think that would affect, like, again, the people like us. I don't think it's not going to wane my interest by any means.
It's not being made for us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's just more so the reason for everything going on is it's just people our age are getting. I mean, you've been collecting for a long time, but people for me, like me, I just got back into collecting. And I feel like that's more so the case, as a lot of people have gotten into it in the last 4 or 5 years and kind of brought the franchise up to where there has been a lot of people that have been in the pipeline for a long time. And I feel like you're getting a lot more of the influx of the newbies like me that are really propping it up right now.
I mean, when it comes to the modern action figures, I started in the past 4 or 5 years. I didn't, before
there really wasn't anything for modern figures before the past 4 or 5 years either.
Really.
So.
There was like that crap Playmates is still putting out, re-released over and over again. But
and if you were lucky enough to get the original comic book Mirage figures, it's like $1,000 set now. So,
by what studio?
The NECA, like the ones they put out in like 2008, the Mirage figures.
Yeah, because I have the Playmates one that comes with the comic book, the Leonardo side series where, like, it's basically
yeah
where he gets jumped and like crashes through April's apartment and stuff. I have the Playmates figure that I got back in like 2013 or something, but well, I guess one last thing I'll say. One rumor, I said I was going to talk about rumors from the movie. One of them's just so zany I have to mention it, that I heard. I don't know if it's true or not. Apparently Paul Rudd, who's playing Mondo Gecko, is doing an Australian accent in the movie.
I don't know. I feel like Paul Rudd's one of those people that can do no wrong. I feel like he's somebody that nobody ever has a bad thing to say about that guy. So I'm interested to see how his Australian accent goes.
Oh, apparently also, I said I wasn't going to talk about any of these rumors. Apparently Scumbug's in the movie also. But
And that's what I was hoping for, that there would be a lot of characters that aren't even announced, or that maybe their actors just aren't famous enough for them to announce their names, that I'm hoping we do get an even bigger slew of the mutant characters, even if they're just background characters and you're just like, oh, damn, that's Scumbug. Like, you know what I mean? Like, still just be cool to pay homage and stuff like that.
Yeah, kind of a mutants who's who kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
This is April O'Neil, Channel 6 News, and you're watching the Party Wagon Podcast.
All right, you guys. So we're going to kick off our first top 10 countdown here, and it's going to be top 10 episodes from the original animated series. And this list was a lot harder to do than I thought it was. For some reason, I thought I only liked like 10 episodes, but it turns out there is a ton where I'm like, oh man, this one's not going to make it. Oh man, this one's not going to make it.
It was super hard to do. The same with you. When we first came up with this, I'm like, oh, that won't be that hard. I think I know what my favorite episodes are. Like, there's a lot of filler episodes, to be honest, and stuff. But then, like, I started going through, like, all of my seasons and stuff, and looking through them. I'm like, oh shit, I love that episode. Oh shit, I love this episode and stuff. And I'm like, what I originally imagined was going to be my top 10 list is not at all what ended up being my top 10 list, actually.
So mine was, I knew a lot of what was going to be on there, but like I said, I just didn't realize I did have so many favorite episodes. And when we were talking about it a little bit earlier this week, I knew it was going to be very season 1 and 2 heavy, but season 3 was kind of like the shocker season for me, honestly.
So many bangers.
Yeah.
See, that was the same for me. Season 3, it might even have the most episodes if you count, because we're going to do honorable mentions before our number ones. I don't know. Season 3 might have the most on collectively on my list, actually.
Yeah, I think it does for me now too. And even season 4 crept a couple in there. So, and that's where we'll kick things off. So my number 10 episode is Raph Meets His Match, season 4, episode number 9. And I'm sure this is on your list somewhere. I know it definitely is. It's our introduction to Mona Lisa. And it's a kind of a Raph solo story, which typically I like having all 4 of the turtles there together. There's very few solo adventures that I really like, but this one, it's a Raph heavy one. It's one that I do like. It's kind of a stupid story how they get to there. They buy their pizzas from a place that's literally a Donald Trump ripoff. Donald Crump, or what is his name?
Donald Crump, yeah.
Donald Crump, yeah. And Raph wins a free trip to this cruise where everything goes wrong. gets taken over by these evil scientist pirates with all the anemone monsters, which I can't remember if we talked about this or not, but the anemone monsters are one that I would definitely really want NECA to, I really hope they do those in an Ultimate figure.
A 2-pack with like the pirate captain and an anemone. That would be awesome.
Or I feel like they'll probably do him in an Ultimate, so it'll probably be huge, I bet, if they do that. That's and you want to army build them too. So yeah, that's one of my highest wants on my NECA list, because so every episode that's on my top 10 list was one that I had on VHS, and this was the one that came when it was the Sewer Heroes quadrilogy or whatever that originally came out with all 4 of the turtles, and was the first episode. So it's one that I've seen a million times. I loved Mona Lisa. I typically didn't even like female characters at the time, but she was one that I did like because, again, we talked about this earlier, I definitely had a crush on her when I was a kid. So yeah, one of my favorite episodes. It's a lot of fun. Good Raph solo story. One that actually had to fight for its spot into the top 10, which before I did this, I thought it was for sure going to be somewhere in the mid pack of my top 10 before I actually started writing it out.
Oh, wow. My number 10, this episode actually has a lot of problems, which I'll get into in a bit. But my number 10 episode is Leatherhead, the Terror of the Swamp, or Leatherhead, Terror of the Swamp, I guess. I don't know what it is. So you have Invasion of the Punk Frogs in, season 2. And that's a great episode. You got Shredder in like his Miami Vice suit, like down in Florida, and he makes the frogs and all. But there's something about you revisit the frogs, you go back to Florida, but now you add Leatherhead, he's like one of my favorite mutants. And he's always just been an awesome villain. There's just something about that episode that's so memorable to me. And I just remember the first time I saw that as a kid, like Leatherhead's one of the first like genuinely intimidating like recurring villains they have in the show. He's a lot goofier when you grow up and he's like, "Bye, Gumbo," and all this stuff. You're like, okay.
He's very sticky for sure. Like they really leaned into that.
I guarantee. But I like, when you see him, he kicks the crap out of the frogs. Like they all use their weapons. He just grabs them and swings them around, and he makes them as slaves and stuff. Like no one can stop Leatherhead.
Yeah, he's very OP at first for sure.
Yeah, so like for that reason, I love it. But then when you get into it, it's like you don't have Pat Furley as Krang in that episode. You have that stupid like imitation Krang voice.
Yep.
You don't have what's the voice actor for Donatello and Bebop? What's his name?
Oh, I always forget his.
I can't think of his name, but you don't have him. So you have this horrible Donatello voice and you have this horrible Bebop. There's a weird glitch in that episode where Bebop's shades, like the lenses aren't black, they're purple, like the rest of his glasses. And it's consistent throughout the whole episode, but not like that in any other episode. And it's just loaded with errors. There's like, scenes where there's like 2 Leonardos and stuff. And like Raph's voice comes out of Donatello. It's loaded with all the usual problems. But for some reason, I just love that episode. I don't know what it is. It's such a good episode. It's just such a memorable one. Even when Leatherhead's introduced as like just a gator, he's like bigger than a boat. He's like humongous at the beginning.
Right.
And I always found it weird. It's kind of implied he murders the dude at the beginning. So it starts off where there's like a father and his son. He's like hillbillies on this boat. And the son's like, "What are we doing out here, Paul? Let's go home." He's like, "I want to hunt down Leatherhead finally." Yep. And then like, Leatherhead crashes the boat and it shows them get away. And then Leatherhead mutates into, the mutant. But then the next time we see him, he's wearing the father's clothes.
Right.
Like the exact same outfit. So I was like, oh shit, he murdered that dude. Like
he just been like the beginning of Terminator 2 where he just beats him up and takes his stuff.
Yeah, he just straight up ate that kid's dad and just like took his clothes. So yeah, Leatherhead doesn't mess around. So for that, I don't know. Leatherhead just seemed so badass in that episode. And even though I love the New York setting and the Manhattan setting and everything, the sewers and Channel 6 and all that, it was always a little special when you got an episode here or there, kind of like Raphael Meets His Match, where you get a new setting that's like different than the usual. So anytime they went to Florida, which was only like 2 or 3 times in the series, it was always a little cool. It was like, oh, nice. We got a new setting in the episode, which again, like you said, how the setup to Raphael Meets His Match is so dumb. The setup to Leatherhead's episode is dumb too, where like the turtles are going through a photo album.
Right.
They're like, "Hey, remember those frog guys?" And then immediately the frogs call.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to show back up here.
And then it just so happens that April and Irma are vacationing in like Miami so they can go down and stay with them. but then they didn't have anything for Irma to do, so they just write her out immediately. She's like, "Oh, I don't want to deal with this," and she just runs away and goes back home. It's really not a good episode, but I don't know, for some reason I got so excited seeing Leatherhead show up as a kid that it's just always had an impact on me, my whole life.
Yeah,
So.
all the first appearance episodes stand out really strong for episodes that I didn't even see a lot as a kid, because again, some of these characters, Leatherhead was one that was actually more reoccurring than others as well, but I mean, like Muckman and Joe Eyeball, was he only in one episode? And I still remember that episode really well.
Yeah, Muckman and Joe Eyeball, I'll never forget about that episode. The main thing that sticks out to me is that's the only time I think like a male character is making advances towards Irma and she's not into him, because Joe Eyeball's into Irma. So. But Irma, she flirted with Rat King, she's flirted with the Turtles, she's flirted with Rex 1. She dated Rex 1. So
right.
So anyway, that's my number 10.
All right, so moving on to my number 9, and so this was one that was just hard because I didn't know which Leonardo episode I even wanted, but I feel like this one came down to my favorite one. So it's Leonardo versus Tempestra, and there's a lot of reasons I like this episode. One, I like that they go to an arcade after hours and just with a stack of pizzas. Like, I remember seeing that when I was a kid, and I was like, dude, that would be so cool to spend the night in an arcade and eat pizza all night. I love that part of it. And for whatever reason, I feel like this is one of those episodes that had a way bigger budget, because with the fight with all the monsters at the end, like that's some of the best animation in any of the later seasons. Like all of those fights look really cool. And I feel like it's one of the first times in a long time where the Turtles got to be in a fight where they didn't seem really stupid. Like they actually put on a cool fight. They did cool things. I mean, kind of cheesy things to kill all the monsters, but it was, I don't know, much more like fun and exciting and adventurous than a lot of the episodes and all the slapsticky stuff that was going on at the time. Like it just really stands out as a good action episode, especially for that era.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a memorable one. I knew you were going to have it on yours.
I talk about it a lot. So yeah, you could probably guess a lot of mine. So,
but it was, you're right though. I didn't really ever think about that. The fights were way more serious in that episode than they were in, like most of by that point in the show, usually the fighting was like, just barely even existed. And when it was, there was just goofy. So
yeah, so that's always one of my favorites. I think Tempestra is a really good villain too. She's very just, I don't know. She's just one of those people that's just kind of evil for the sake of evil. Like she doesn't really want anything except destruction. And I really like villains like that too, that don't even really need much more motivation than they're just, I love evil.
Yeah. Well, that would be the scariest villain because there's no reasoning with that.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I mean, so the most popular betrayal of any villain of all time, the Joker from from Dark Knight. And that's exactly how that Joker was just evil for the sake of evil. He wasn't motivated by money. He just wanted to fuck shit up.
Yeah, it was chaos. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I always thought it was weird though, because Leo's obsessed with the game. But he's just like drawing Tempestra's face and like writing her name. It's like, does he have a crush on this character? That's what it seemed like. But I thought it was kind of cool too, when you got like a new glimpse into Leo's leader persona, and that like he's obsessed with being the best, like kind of like that's like one of the few times we see that where like Leo's obsessed with being the best.
And it's also really funny how it says like he beat every video game in there more than once, and then all of a sudden there's just this new mystery game that they didn't discover until that night.
Yeah, it's definitely an awesome episode. It doesn't make it on my list, but
I figured since you had a rebuttal on that one, it wasn't. So yeah. That's my number 9 pick.
All right, my number 9 pick, an episode you may or may not know. It's called Raphael Meets His Match.
Okay, I figured that would have been a little bit higher on your list, honestly.
Honestly, at first I didn't think it was going to make it on the list.
Really?
Yeah, at first, because there's so many good episodes. But
that's
then as I was,
to me. That's the one episode I knew for sure I would have bet money on that was going to be in your top 10. That's the only one that I thought was a hard for sure.
When I first thought of my top 10, I thought Leatherhead would come before Raphael Meets His Match, actually. Because Raphael Meets His Match, I was thinking like of it on terms of like, okay, as an actual episode of a TV show, it's not as well written or anything as earlier ones, so I was marking it lower. But then I was looking through it, I'm like, but it has so much personal like attachment for me. Yeah. Like this episode, as I've said in like my Turtle Talk videos and stuff, is like, it's like my white whale. So it's like, I'll tell the story again real quick. I'll do a bridged version where, I was a little kid and, afternoon we'd be watching Ninja Turtle reruns on USA or whatever network was showing on. I think it was Beetlejuice, and then they'd show Ninja Turtles. This episode came on. I'd never seen it before. And Mona Lisa came on, and I was like, oh my God, who's this? I was like, just in awe. I loved her. And then my mom that calls like, kids, it's dinner. And I'm like, oh shit, no, not now. Like, I just saw the hottest lizard I've ever seen in my life. So then at some point she's like, Brendan, just get up here. Cause I'm like, oh, I'm reading a book. I'm putting the books away or something. I'm like making something up. So I run upstairs. I like drink my dinner practically. Like I eat it so fast. And I race downstairs and I turn on the TV and it's a Fred Wolf production just written on the screen and shuts off. I'm like, no. And I always thought like, I'll see it again. Cause I saw some episodes like, Mutagen Monster with the big bull. I saw it like 1,000 times when I was a kid and stuff. And it's like, I just thought, okay, it'll come on again. I never saw it again. I never caught that episode again. There came a point where I thought I made it up in my head. And then I saw the VHS tape in the store and I'm like, oh shit, it was real. It was actually real. And I saw the toy of her on the back of Half Court. I'm like, oh, she was real. And so for me, actually watching that episode when I got the DVDs as an adult was like ending a chapter in my life. So for me, it's just always been that like unobtainable episode. Well, not always, but for the first like 20 years of my life, it was like that unobtainable episode. It had to be on there for that. And it is funny. I do like when Mona Lisa's giving her backstory and Raph's like, oh, this is going to be a flashback. There's going to be like a crossfade transition or something. And then it starts going, it's like, see, it's a flashback. I called it. And all this stuff. So like, there's some good jokes in there. It's not like the funniest writing of the show, but there's some good ones in there. And it's just an awesome episode. It's a fun episode. So
yeah, for sure. Moving on to my number 8. So this is another one that I thought was actually going to rank a little bit higher, but it's season 2, episode 10. New York Shiniest.
Oh, wow. That low.
Yep. And again, out of all the episodes, 8 isn't really that low. But like I said, this is another episode that I've talked about a ton on here. Like I really like Rex 1. He's one of my favorite side characters of all time. And the one thing that I want to get out right off the bat is the NECA figure is definitely too big for sure. There's only like one scene where he's holding up Donatello and Leonardo's down by his legs where he's really, really big. Other than that, April almost comes up to his shoulders most of the time. So the NECA figure is definitely just too big, but that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about the episode. And I love this episode. I loved Rex 1. I don't know why. He wasn't too slapsticky for me at the time, but he was still like silly. Like the first thing when April tells him to hold his tongue and he sticks it out and he grips it. Like, why does that robot have a tongue? You know what I mean? Like, it's so ridiculous. And again, the NECA figure added that, which is a cool little touch. But it's just a cool episode. It's cool when all the evil Rexes show up and there's just an army of them. And I really hope, again, back to NECA, that we do get those because the black and red color scheme, I just really do like on those guys. Yeah. They look really sweet, but it's just a really fun episode. It's really, so I think Big Mac's a little bit after that. So they're definitely throwing a lot of robots at you and stuff, but this is definitely my favorite robot episode for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. There were a lot of robot episodes actually. Yeah. But yeah, that's an awesome episode.
Is it coming up on your list too?
It might be.
Okay. Gotcha.
My number 8, it sounds like I have a real Leatherhead bias, I guess. Leatherhead meets the Rat King is my number 8. That's from season 3. I'm not as professional as you. I didn't take down the episode numbers. But this one stands out to me, not only because it has some memorable, funny moments and stuff, but like again, Irma like kind of settling for Rat King. She's like locked with Rat King. She's like, hey, maybe I could do this. But it's just the fact that this was the first time we got like these one-off, because these were both one-off characters at this point. Like we had Enter the Rat King and Leatherhead Terror of the Swamp, and we had never really had them cross over and team up and like fight each other before and stuff. So it's like we had, you saw Bebop and Rocksteady with Shredder and sometimes Baxter like a bunch of times already, but we never really got this where like it's like a mashup. It's almost like akin to like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, like the monster mashes and stuff, or like King Kong versus Godzilla. It's like now we get Leatherhead and Rat King, and at first they're fighting, and it's kind of cool to see how even though Leatherhead's this big, massive gator, like Rat King actually gets the better of him at first and gets him in like the collar thing and all, but then they end up like teaming up by the end of the episode. But it's not like, the greatest work of art ever or anything, but just the fact that you got to see these two villains team up, it kind of almost told you like, these are going to be like recurring bad guys. These are going to be like a big deal for the Turtles, like down the road. And it just felt like a special event for me as a kid at the time. Cause it's like, again, I'd never seen that. You kind of just see like, oh, there's the episode with Leatherhead, he's done. Oh, there's the episode with Rat King, he's done. Like, you just kind of think like, okay, they did that toy, on to the next one. But now, like, no, they're going to team up now. You're going to see your favorite action figures, like, team up. And I thought that was just awesome, so.
Yeah, and it's weird that you mentioned that because that's something I thought, because one of my favorite episodes that's going to be coming down the list later is another one where you get two villains crossing over that it's weird to see together at the same time, because you're right. There was like the norms of Shredder and Bebop and Rocksteady, because they're, in the same like clan, essentially. That's a terrible word. I don't know what word I want to use here. Well, yeah, they're essentially together all the time. And then Baxter is another one that's like really familiar to them as well. Like Baxter can work by himself, but he's almost always in Shredder episodes for the most part. Even in Fly Baxter form, there's typically the Shredder involved in one way or another, because that's another cool dynamic, is how all the villains, even though, we'll get to that later when I do that, but it's cool to see the Rat King and Leatherhead together, because like you said, at first they're kind of fighting each other, but then they realize that the enemy of their enemy, the enemy of my enemy,
the enemy of
my enemy is my friend type of situation. It's kind of like the bond they make.
I just always thought that was cool. I always thought it was cool to see that. Something I wish they did a little more often. Like, I would have liked to see, I don't know, something crazy. Like, I guess they did do like Night of the Rogues eventually.
Yeah, which was almost like overkill though, because they tried giving everybody in there instead of just seeing like, hey, how can these two characters meld together? Because I feel like Leather King and Rathead are pretty good. They're almost not even foils. They are just like a good tag team almost.
Yeah, they are. I love you just called them Leather King and Rathead.
Oh, what?
Yeah, but they're good. They're a good duo. I actually wish they teamed up more often. Actually, I always thought it would have been cool to have Leatherhead, Rat King, and Baxter all team up, because they're kind of like the most recurring villains that aren't the main villains. But unfortunately, we never got that. And also, Fly Baxter, he's basically always being manipulated anytime he does show up, like you said, by Shredder usually. So. Like he'll come back wanting to kill Shredder, then in 2 seconds Shredder's like, "Oh no, it's not me you hate, it's the Turtles." He's
right?
Like, okay.
Stupid schemes, yeah. For a genius, he's not very smart. You know what I mean?
I feel like Baxter's one of the only ones, not to get too off topic. They actually always did that, where his genius human side is fighting with the stupid fly side all the time. Yep. Where like he's coming up with a scheme, then he gets distracted by Sugar, and he just wants to go lick Sugar. Right. like they did a good job of making it like it's almost kind of sad. It's like this poor crazy guy who ended up in a mental institution and stuff is now like his brain is rotting into a fly brain, and it's like it's kind of sad actually when you think about it.
I'd say he's the most tragic character of the original animated series for sure.
Yeah, he ends up like floating in limbo for most of his life, and it's like
yeah, things don't work out well for him. All right, so on to episode 7. So this one fell about where I thought it was going to. Super Bebop and Mighty Rocksteady.
Another robot episode.
This episode, it has a lot of fun plot threads, so I feel like Bebop or Super Bebop and Mighty Rocksteady, or Mighty Bebop and Super Rocksteady, nobody has it straight. Even in the cartoon episode itself, it's not straight. And I feel like they don't even show up till later. The most memorable parts for me, honestly, are all the other crap that's going on. So Bebop and Rocksteady are trying to stick that mesmerizer at the top of the tower. They kind of get sidelined when Super Bebop and Mighty Rocksteady or go out, and a lot of this happens at Channel 6. There's a lot of the fighting happens in the lobby, and you get some funny stuff with the Channel 6 crew. So I don't know why I always liked it when they think they're kids. Like that part is just very, very, very entertaining to me. Even in the rewatch, like that part never gets old. I really like all the shtick that goes in with the mesmerizer.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely like a lot of That's something that's actually always a little jarring when I go back and watch episodes of this show, is like, oh yeah, I forgot all these subplots happened in this one episode. Or I didn't even mention it in Leatherhead Terror of the Swamp. There's like the fact that there's mutagen in the water, mutants, it powers them up. Like I think Mike and Don get like powered up, and then Shredder turns into like a baby when he touches. Like, humans get like de-aged in it. So it's really weird. There's always these weird little subplots going on that, like, you already have a giant alligator, you don't need the baby thing also. But
right, and it's funny because I feel like some episodes are like super lacking, but the Mighty Super Bebop and Mighty Rocksteady is the one to where I feel like it does just have two very super strong plot points in it that I remember very well, that it's almost like they could have been their own episodes, but they come together to make this really good episode for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a good one. I think if you do have Attack of Big Mac and Mighty Making of Metalhead on here, I think you have a robot bias.
But I don't actually have either of those on there, so yeah. So these are my two favorite robot episodes for sure.
There were some good robot episodes. Making of Metalhead was a good one too. It's not on my list, but that was a good one. My number 7. I thought this one was going to be lower on the list actually, but it's has such a strong sentimental value for me, is Sky Turtles. It's like such a filler episode, but it was the only episode I owned on VHS officially as a kid. I got it at Burger King. And I don't think I even got the Burger King because we didn't eat fast food a lot. My dad liked fast food. My mom was against it. So we rarely had it. And if we did, it was usually McDonald's because that was like right up the road. So like we rarely did Burger King, but I think this was before we moved, so we didn't live down the street from the McDonald's yet. So maybe, but I think my dad just picked up Burger King on the way home from work or like a business trip or something, and then like said, "Hey, can you give me one of those Turtles movies while you're at it?" Because I think if there was 4 of us kids, we would have got all 4 of the VHS tapes if that was the case, probably. So but yeah, I always had this tape, and I watched the hell out of it. It's the definition of a filler episode, like I'm aware, but I don't know. I just love that episode. It's such a just a weird idea. It's just so Krang just decides he's going to build like an anti-gravity machine, and for the hell of it, he just builds it. And then Shredder just starts screwing with it. Like, I want to do this. This is my plan. And like, Krang's not even stopping him. He's just like, don't do that. I want to use it and all this stuff. And it's like, don't push it too hard and stuff. And Shredder ends up screwing it up and all, but whatever. It's just like, it's the best episode to just display the stupid logic that you have to enjoy this cartoon. That even though there's anti-gravity going on, where everything's floating up, there are boots that you can just slip onto your feet and you can just walk around in the anti-gravity and you're not affected. Your hair's not sticking up or anything. It's like, so like Bebop and Rocksteady, and magically, conveniently, Bebop, Rocksteady, and 2 foot soldiers go to the surface with these boots so that all 4 turtles can get them. And there's this whole thing where they use like a satellite dish to reverse like the waves and like overblow it and destroy it. And like Donatello's explaining it like it makes sense. It's like, that makes no freaking sense, dude. But like, I didn't care as a kid. I just loved that episode. And there's just like lines that are throwaway, nothing filler lines that just stuck in my head. Like there's a point where Michelangelo just goes like, "Oh, I sure hope this works." And anytime someone says, "I hope this works," I hear that. Yeah. We mix them both shoot each other. And anytime I hear someone say, "I hope this works," I hear Michelangelo in my head to this day. I've always heard that. Like, I can't hear that expression without hearing that line because I saw it so many times. And there's some funny jokes, like when the Channel 6 news team start floating around and Vernon's like, shit talking like Byrne and all, and then Byrne like floats out into the room while he's shit talking him in his chair and stuff. And there's a joke later on where Donatello first sees the satellite dish. He's like, "Oh, look at that tremendous dish." And Irma's like, "Oh, thank you, Donatello." Yeah. And he's like, "No, Irma, that's not what I'm saying." Like, but yeah, it's a funny episode. But I know it's not a special episode for anyone really, but for me it is because I didn't own the VHS tapes a lot. I caught it on TV, which is like the opposite of you. And I had a couple recorded. I had like a Mondo Gecko's episode recorded, and that got recorded over probably in like a month from like one of my sisters or something. But yeah, this was the only one I just owned, and I just watched it over and over again. So
this was my first episode out of my top 10, and it's one that I thought was going to be in there. So I actually started taking notes on this episode. It is. So it's one I had on VHS because of the Burger King VHS, and I loved this episode. Like this one really pained me to leave off my top 10. Like it's my hard 11 for sure. And it is ridiculous, like you said. So not only do they make an anti-gravity machine, but for whatever reason, once gravity goes away, why do the buildings just fall off their foundations? Like the integrity of the building would still be holding them there. And then when everything falls back down, it falls right back into place. And everything's fine. You can just go back to the building. No building code violations for anything.
Which is great too, because you see the buildings like diagonally floating across.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
That's how they fall right back down. None of them topple over, and they just it's like they cemented themselves back together.
And they're holding that giant dish from the glider. Yeah. And it's only this small area that the dish is returning as opposed to all these waves. And the thing that drives me the most nuts, though, is how 3 of them wear 4 boots, and they have 2 feet in those middle boots. Right. That drove me nuts as a kid. I'm like, you cannot fit 2 feet in one shoe. That's impossible. The show is stupid, but I still love that episode.
Yeah, there was definitely some weird stuff in there. There was what always stuck out to me, not to get too sidetracked with Sky Turtles, which I call the filler episode. But you see, I think it's one of the only times you see Rocksteady's feet in that episode.
And he has like the pointy toenails.
Yeah, he has like claws. He has like, you'd expect like a cat mutant to have like feet like that, or orc from Lord of the Rings. Like I thought he would have like human feet or rhino feet. It's like, no, he has like this weird human claw like thing going on. But
yeah, glad you brought up that episode. I'm glad I got to talk about that one.
Okay, good.
My number 6, season 3, episode 26, Pizza by the Shred.
Oh, that's in my my honorable mentions.
Okay, yeah. So this one, I got a lot of notes on this one because there's a lot. So one of the first things, and I remembered this when I was watching another episode that's going to appear on my list, probably to a lot of people's surprise. The first thing that it starts off with is when they're working on the Star Cruiser. And the one they're working on is red, but the one that gets left there is blue. They take the red one back with them. So it's weird that the red one's there in this video. Even as a kid, I remember that being weird in the continuity. And it's also weird that it's 3 seasons later before they're even like, oh yeah, we have the Star Cruiser that we just decided not to do anything with until today. So I always thought that was kind of a funny part of that episode. But the thing that's my favorite part about this episode that we were talking about earlier, and I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit, is how you get the mashup of the Rat King with Shredder. And it's the first time that I like kind of figured out that just because a bad guy is a bad guy, like the enemy of my enemy isn't always my friend, because they're kind of not really into each other. And I'm just like, oh, so it kind of establishes Rat King is more neutral than almost bad. Like, yeah, he steals the pizza, but he's not really a real bad guy in that episode. I feel like he's kind of just more like a neutral party. And the thing that I've brought this up before when I've talked about it too. This episode is the biggest commercial they've ever done for sure. So in like a 5-minute scene where they're going to the sewer to find, they're chasing that sardine on the pizza. Yeah. They have the foot ski, what's the sewer tube called? The party tube. What is it?
Yeah. Party tube, I think. Yeah.
Yep, the party tube. They have the plunger gun. They have the retro catapult, all in that little scene, all super fast. 4 toys that were probably out at the time that they just wanted to push into this episode. And even as I was a kid, I'm like, this is a lot of things in this episode that they never use again, other than the retro catapult. And then the other really random thing about this episode, I'm kind of working my way back now, is when Michelangelo gets a job at this pizza place, he doesn't ever even go inside the building. Like, could you imagine if it was that easy to get a job where you didn't have to set foot inside your establishment and like, okay, you're on the payroll now, order these pizzas, but never come inside. Like, it's a ridiculous episode, but I love it so much.
My takeaway there was just that like Michelangelo wouldn't know how a human job works anyway. So he's
like, okay, this is normal.
Yeah, he probably just thinks that's normal. The thing is, like, why would Shredder assume that Michelangelo would be? Right. But the thing that always got me about that episode was like, how do they not know it's Shredder? Like in the commercial, you see Shredder's hand,
right? Even as a kid, I'm like, it's so obvious it's Shredder. These guys are so stupid.
Mike's like talking to him, like his eyes are like in the slit. You can hear the voice and stuff. And it's like, how can Mike like be that dumb? Like, come on. Right. The standout thing for me, because I'm actually glad you brought this up, because again, this was in my honorable mentions. So there's a part where Mike gets like locked in the pizza freezer. I remember because my oldest sister, Sarah, she would always call back to that. I remember being at the dinner table once and she mentioned like, she was talking about how horrible a death it would be to be locked in a freezer. And I'm like, I guess I never thought about that before. And she says like, you remember like in that episode of Ninja Turtles, she mentioned that. And it's like, then when you think about it, it's like, yeah, if they didn't save them, that would have been fucking horrifying. Like, right? Frozen to death. Like, so that kind of like, I remember as a kid that always kind of like, that kind of bothers me actually. It's kind of creepy. That's a great episode. That one was like, I was fighting with, see, when I first wrote my top 10, that was in it. But then I decided when I was looking through it, like, Raphael Meets His Match deserves to be on here more than Pizza by the Shred and stuff. Yeah. So my number 6 is Return of the Shredder, which is the Crooked Ninja Turtle Gang episode. It's the first episode of season 2. It kind of kicks off like how the show is going to play out for the next season or two. It sets the stage really well. It almost works as a first episode. Like if you didn't see the first season, I think Return of the Shredder almost works as a first episode. Just if you know, like, okay, the Turtles fight Shredder and Krang, and those are the bad guys and stuff. You can kind of start here. But I not that you should. I recommend watching the first season. Definitely the best stuff. But it is kind of like a good starting off point. You have like the Turtles in the grocery store, like Leo and Mike are like in the grocery store. And like they're so nice. They're such good citizens and stuff. And then when the Crooked Ninja Turtle Gang goes in there later on, she's like, oh, I thought those Ninja Turtles were such nice boys or whatever.
She can't tell the difference.
Yeah. It's literally guys with paper bags on their heads. And then like Smash doesn't even have the paper bag. He's just wearing a headband. Yeah. And she's like, you can't tell the difference. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like that fight scene at the beginning. It's, it's simple, but the fighting in the episode's pretty cool. It's a pretty good, it's pretty good for like post season 1 fighting. Yeah. And I just like the whole idea of Shredder kind of just making his like, okay, I'm just going to make a new Foot Clan basically. Like you're not, because Krang's being a dick. Krang's like, you can't have Bebop and Rocksteady. You can't have the Foot Soldiers. You can't have the Rock Soldiers. I'm just sending you to Earth, and you can go fuck yourself. And like, until you kill the Turtles, I don't want to hear about you. It's like, well, he'd kill the Turtles a lot easier if you sent them all that other shit, which is kind of weird. I guess that's kind of where they set up in the show that like Krang is above Shredder, which always kind of bothered me. I always liked Shredder being the main bad guy. They're kind of equals, I guess, but. Yeah, it's just a memorable episode. It's a lot of fun. I think it's a shame that like in the beat 'em up games, you've never had like Crooked Ninja Turtle guys just be like grunts that you could beat up, like stage enemies and stuff. And I think it's honestly one that stuck with a lot of people because, I mean, we got a Crooked Ninja Turtle Gang NECA toy and a Smash NECA toy, and everyone seems to remember that episode because, it was so early. And I do have to say for season 1 and season 2, like, I think I've said this before, I didn't see them immediately. Like, when I started watching the show, it was in 89, and that's when season 3 was airing. So one of my earliest memories of the show is watching the making of Metalhead. Early in the morning, I remember watching the Metalhead episode, and like, I had the Metalhead toy, and I remember just like thinking like, oh, this is so cool. That was my first times like having the toy and seeing the show. But those were like my earliest memories, was seeing like the Usagi Yojimbo episode and stuff. Whereas like, very shortly after that, like I think it was still that same year, but I started catching the reruns of like season 1 and season 2 and stuff. But those weren't my first episodes. So I guess it's just a testament to how good they are, is that when I actually did see those episodes, they just like, I was like, okay, these are the best episodes. So, that one it's just a solid start for a season, in my opinion.
Yeah, because that's one that sticks out a lot to me that I didn't have on VHS. Because for whatever reason, I don't know, the Crooked Ninja Turtle Gang, like they're just very memorable goons. Like you said, it's very surprising. We've never got another iteration of them until the NECA figures came out. And it's honestly surprising that they waited as long to do them as they did, because it seems like that would have kind of been like one of the more deep cuts that they'd want to get out early, because I think they're some of my favorite NECA figures too. I don't know what it is, but just they're so stupid, but I don't know. It just works for Turtles. Like they just have a stupid bag over their head. Like it's ridiculous, but they're a very fun looking gang for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Breaking into our top 5s here. So this one is very in the spirit of Pizza by the Shred. Season 3, episode 18, Cowabunga Shredhead. This is another one we've talked about on here before. And It's an absolute ridiculous episode, but it is so much fun. I think it's James Avery's best performance in the entire series. For him to be doing his Michelangelo or his Shredder doing an impression of Michelangelo, like it's just such a fun character. It's so ridiculous. And we talked about this before too. There's something, it's one of those episodes where it's like they got an outside animation studio to work on it. That was just like a step above, and it has just that kind of like liquidy fluidity feel to it when the characters move. Thing that they're doing in the beginning, they're trying to just make a hologram of Michelangelo, and then that machine starts going haywire. But why does all of Michelangelo's memories and knowledge get put into his brain when all they had was just a visual hologram of Michelangelo? Like, it really makes no sense. And I never even thought about it until I started thinking about this episode deeply.
You know what it is I think like all of the personality replication of Michelangelo was on the disc, and they were supposed to put it in to give the Mike hologram the personality, but Bebop put it in backwards and jammed it and screwed it up.
Yeah, that's
so
what made it all messed up.
I think that's what was supposed to be happening. But then later on in the episode, it's like, oh, well, the disc actually had like a hologram of the president on it.
Yeah. And is it Reagan or Bush? I can't tell who it is in that one either.
It looks kind of like both of them, honestly.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite episodes. Yeah, not really a lot that goes on there, but it's just cool seeing Shredder just roll into the turtle lair, and everyone's like, the fuck is this guy doing here? And he's just acting like nothing's the matter. Like, it's just a very fun episode. Excellent performance by James Avery. Super fun. One of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, that's a great one. My number 5 is Shredderville from season 3. This is like the homage to It's a Wonderful Life, where the turtles are all saying like, I think the world would be better if we never existed, because, you wouldn't have all these mutants around, and the Foot Clan wouldn't be trying to stop us and hurting people. So the whole episode is just a dream, spoiler, but the turtles somehow share a dream. All 4 of them have the same dream. And it's technically the first red sky episode, because the skies are all red through the whole episode. They wake up in the middle of the sewers. There's no lair. And they go to the surface, and everything's dirty and destroyed, and like there's just crime everywhere. And the sky's all red and polluted, and the Technodrome is like rotting away and all this stuff. And it turns out that without the turtles, they couldn't initially stop Shredder, so Shredder took over the world. And unfortunately, speaking of James Avery, there is no James Avery in this episode. It's the other guy voicing Shredder. Yeah. But because that's what they say earlier on, they're like, oh, on that loudspeaker, that voice sounded like Shredder. I'm like, no, hell no, it doesn't. It doesn't sound like Shredder. He's barely in the episode, and he is funny when he's in the episode. Yeah, so they just go through this hypothetical world where they don't exist, and some wild stuff happens. Like Channel 6 News Building becomes Shredder's headquarters. Bebop and Rocksteady, they're never mutated. They're still humans. But they took over like the whole main news floor, and they turn it into a harem, and they make like April and Irma are dressed up like, like harem girls. Like they're like dressed up like Princess Jasmine and like I Dream of Jeannie or something. And like they work for Bebop and Rocksteady. And I always found it so weird. There's one line where Irma says like, I wish Bebop would learn to peel his own grapes. Like, who the hell peels grapes? What the fuck does that mean? But maybe he's allergic to the skin. I don't know. But yeah, they run into so many different characters. They run into like Zack the Fifth Turtle. They actually end up winning him over again. And eventually they win over April and Irma, and Vernon and Bern are like villains in the episode and stuff. And like Krang is kind of, he's their villain, but he's not really, because like his Technodrome is just rotting away because like Shredder's just wasting all the power. So like it's about to like explode. Like the Technodrome's about to explode, and Krang doesn't have a new body because Shredder built his new body for him to stop the turtles. And like he just has the rock soldiers just being the security guards of like the Technodrome. And it's funny how they're able to just like fool General Trag, and like, he's like, oh, you can't come in here. Like, oh, we're here to repair. He's like, have you looked around? Like everything needs repairing. And I forget what they say. They say something. He's like, oh, well, if you mean that, then go on in. And he just lets him in. And yeah, it's just, there's a lot of funny stuff in the episode. I think it's like pretty clever. Just a lot of the jokes are really good. And then when they finally, get to Shredder at the end, he's like he's just wearing a business suit and he's still wearing the helmet and the mask and stuff, but like he's just wearing a business suit. And earlier on, they make him watch a video with like him when he's a baby and he's still wearing the mask, and then as a kid at school and he's still wearing the mask and he's like bullying kids. And it's like he doesn't even want to be leader anymore because he's like the ruling the world sucks because you have like all this responsibility and powers running out and stuff. And he's like like you guys come from a world where like I don't rule it. That sounds amazing and all this stuff. And like it's just I don't know. It's a really fun like what if kind of episode, and it's one I actually don't remember from when I was a kid. It was actually when I rewatched the show for the first time, like in my 20s. I remember seeing it and being like, "Oh, this is actually a really funny, clever episode." So it's weird it made it so high without having any childhood like connection. I'm sure I saw it as a kid, but I had never even seen It's a Wonderful Life when I was that young. So, so yeah, I just like it. I think it's a fun episode.
So you know what it reminds me of? Even more of It's a Wonderful Life is Back to the Future 2.
Yeah, it's a lot like that.
That's what it kind of feels like when they go back and Biff uses the almanac to like become a billionaire or whatever. That's kind of what it feels like, is like that like post-apocalyptic type feeling where you just have like one lord that's running everything. Like that's the vibe I feel.
Yeah, because Biff Tannen, even he was at the top of the high rise in the city and everything, and at least there's no weird kind of Biff Lorraine situation going on with Shredder and April or anything. So. Right. But yeah, I just think it's a fun episode. That one's like that one just ranks high for me, just for being like sheerly just like a really fun, well written, cool episode.
Moving on to number 4, and this is where stuff really started to get tough for me. So, Hot Rodding Teenagers from Dimension X, and I know a lot of people hate the neutrinos, but I always liked them, and I just think this is a really good episode. So the first season, like we've talked about this before, there's just something more to it. They had more for the budget, more for the animation, and it has some of the coolest scenes ever. So I know James Rolfe talked about this scene in particular when he did his review, but when they're in the arcade and those missiles come in and it just does that pan shot where it's like going through the arcade before it blows it up, like that's just such a cool shot. Even as when I was a kid, I was like, man, that was like really cool animation. And just all the lasers and stuff when they're fighting with like the neutrinos and the Stone Warriors. They're called Stone Warriors in this episode. I don't know when they get the switch to Rock Soldiers, but like just I don't know, the laser animations look really cool. They use the Techno Rover, which is the only time they ever break that out, and it's just cool that they use that vehicle that never gets used again. And I'm surprised they never made a toy out of that either. Again, so this is another one of those things where it kind of has like not a huge other storyline, but like when they set off the weather device, that's just another part that I always really liked. Like I feel like the animation's really cool right there too, and all the stuff that happens to it, and how Leonardo just jumps right out of the Star Cruiser to slash it. Like I don't know, that whole scene's really cool. But the one thing that's just so stupid about this episode is when they're back fighting them in the Technodrome, and they literally realize their weapons aren't going to work on Trag and Granitor, even though a couple episodes earlier, Michelangelo is using his nunchucks to destroy robots. But Donatello is just like, hey, there's this giant barrel of silicone lubricant here, and just dumps it on the floor, and then they just push him into the portal. Like, why is that barrel of silicone lubricant just sitting on this floor on the Technodrome?
It's like in the video games, so there's always the oil drum that explodes
right there. Like, we'll just put this here for no apparent reason. Like, Krang's setting up for his day. He's like, I'm just going to set this drum of oil here, and I'll come back to it later.
Well, I could see Bebop and Rocksteady leaving it there.
Right.
Like he told them to move it down to the basement or something, and they just left it there. They're like, yeah, whatever. That's one of the things, a few things you touched on, actually, I just want to say is you mentioned James Rolfe years ago when he was doing that's like from Cinemassacre, Angry Video Game Nerd, he did a thing called Turtle Tuesdays, where every Tuesday he covered turtles. And if you haven't seen his retrospective on the original animated series, check it out. He did a really
it's one of my favorites. I watched it a couple times actually.
Oh, really? Yeah, last time I watched it was probably like a year ago, but I rewatch it almost every year at some point. It's like he just does a really good, thorough retrospective of it. Also, my theory, the only reason I would guess they changed the name to Rock Soldiers is I believe Stone Warriors is the name of the rock guys in Masters of the Universe. So that might be why they changed it. Yeah, but one thing that is so cool about that episode, though, is like you don't really get that much of General Trag and Lieutenant Granitor throughout the course of the series. They're built up like they're going to be like major villains, like they're Krang's number one underlings. But like even like in the episodes talked about Shredderville, it's like Trag's there for like a couple jokes, but like he's not like the villain of the episode or anything. So I feel like that was like one of the only episodes. I know there's some later on in the show and all, but they do bring them back sometimes. But that was one of the only episodes for a while that was like very heavily based around the Rock Soldiers.
Yeah. So that's again another reason I really like it, because it's back when the tone was a little bit more serious. So they are pretty like at that point, like Bebop and Rocksteady kind of got exposed as buffoons, but like they're badasses. Like the Turtles are having trouble dealing with them and they have to get rid of them in this really slapsticky way, because in an actual fight, they weren't really any match for them.
Yeah, that's an awesome episode. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like the Neutrinos. I didn't like them when I was a kid, but I like them now. So
I even did. Like I just remember when in the promo, the one line I always remember is, "Cool, Daddy-o, we are frozen." Like I'll always, that's just burned into my brain from that promo. That just
come on, that's cool. Yeah. That's cool. The line that always sticks out to me, it's like one of the funniest like on the nose villain lines ever, is when Krang's talking about how much he hates the Neutrinos. He's like, you know, they have no respect for authority and all this stuff, and worst of all, they love to have fun. He just hates that they have fun. And I think that might be the same episode where Shredder says it feels so good to be so bad. Or but they always had their cheese in there, even when they were taking it a little more seriously. But yeah, I'll do my number 4. It'll be brief because it's Cowabunga Shredhead, which we already talked about. And I don't have too much more to say about why I love it than what you said. I just think like James Avery knocks it out of the park. He's just hilarious in that episode. The whole episode. Even today, like even when I watch it today, I'm cracking up the whole episode when I'm watching.
It's one of the funniest episodes for sure, like without a doubt.
Just like the way he keeps switching back and forth too, because it's like when he hears the word Michelangelo, he becomes Michelangelo. When he hears the word Shredder, he becomes Shredder. So it's just so funny to hear him go from like, "Oh, you moronic mutants," to like, "Whoa, dudes, wait up," and stuff.
Right.
And like, it just cracks me up every time. Yeah, he just does. It's so weird because like he doesn't even question who Michelangelo is. He thinks he's Mike, but he's talking to Mike multiple times in the episode, and he doesn't even.
And he's not like, because he knows what he looks like too. Because when he sees the image on the computer, he knows that's him. So why doesn't he see Mike and be like, "Hey, this is me"? Like it makes no sense.
But one thing that's interesting that episode also reveals is that Bebop and Rocksteady don't even know who the hell the Turtles are. They're like, "Hey, that looks like that surfer
dude."
Yeah, it's like they don't even know their names. Like Bebop and Rocksteady are just taking orders. They don't give a shit about any of this. Like it kind of just reveals that like they're just going along for the ride. Like the Turtles know Bebop and Rocksteady, like everything about them. Bebop and Rocksteady are like, "Hey, these are those guys we have to fight all the time." But yeah, it's a great episode. It's a ton of fun. Like you said, the animation's like so bouncy and fluent and stuff. And not in every scene, but in a lot of them. And yeah, it's a great episode.
My number 3, season 2, episode 6, Case of the Killer Pizzas. So this is the episode with the pizza monsters. I'm so glad we finally got Pizza Monster action figures. I cannot believe this isn't one that Playmates did. I feel like these would have been so good for early Playmates toys. Like they could have made them a little bit bigger and chunkier. Maybe not quite the size of the Mega Mutants, but just made them a little bit bigger. You know what I mean? That would have been my favorite ones. But I just love this episode from start to finish. Rewatching this one, like it just has, I don't know, some of the strongest memories for me. So even right off the bat, when they're at that like bake off or whatever they go to, April and Irma are talking about the guy that Irma just went out on the date with, the accordion player, and he shows up like just huge Italian stereotype guy. Like everything from there on is just so much fun. They win this contest, they win the pizzas, but they accidentally send a couple of them out. They go to these shitty ass kids, and these kids are the biggest turds, man. The Turtles show up there to try to get them, and they're like, "No, screw you guys, these are our pizzas, go get your own pizzas." Like not even impressed that the Ninja Turtles are in their house. And another funny thing from this episode is it's so weird that these people just get fresh pizzas and just pop them in the microwave. That's the first thing they do with these brand new pizzas they get, is everybody just pops them in the microwave, and the whole box fits in a microwave. Like who has ever had a microwave big enough to fit a whole pizza box in? Super ridiculous. And then from there, just all the stuff that plays out in the sewer is just super fun. It's cool. I don't know why the pizza monsters get bigger when they go in the water. Like, it almost seems like it's the food at first that makes them bigger, but then they go in the water and they just get super big and turn into their final xenomorph forms. And another funny thing about that is when they're fighting them in the sewers, they're proportioned pretty well most of the time, but there's one scene where Raph is literally like the size of the calf of one of the pizza monsters, and he kicks it in the ass and it falls over. And that's probably one of the biggest like size discrepancies that's ever been in the show. But other than that, not a lot of nitpicks. We got original Baxter Stockman in this one before he's mutated. He's hanging out with Shredder. So you got a lot of those. They have their dynamic going.
Yeah, that one, that's definitely like one that I think a lot of people just clung to. It was just an all-around good episode. My theory on why they grow, I don't think it's necessarily the food or the water. I think it's like in Alien, the first Alien, the alien keeps changing over like really quickly. Like it comes out as like a little slug thing out of the guy's chest.
Yep.
And then like 10 minutes later, you see it and it's this big black nightmare coming down from the ceiling. So the xenomorph was just supposed to grow gradually. And it was kind of Ridley Scott's way of like being like, you never know what the monster is going to look like when it shows up next time.
Yeah.
So I think they were just emulating what happened in the movie, that like they grew really fast. So that's where I think that I don't think there was anything in particular that made them grow. I think the pizza monsters just grow like in the course of a day. They grow up basically.
Yeah. I just thought it was weird that they're in that baby stage and then they just get a little bit bigger and then all of a sudden they just grow into this giant xenomorph. But
they do.
Again, we're talking about the turtles here, not a lot of rhyme or reason for the things that happen here.
They do make it seem like it is the pizza that's making them grow at first, but I remember that being weird though, that they're just alien creatures from Dimension X, and like Crane just puts their eggs on the pizza. But like they're referred to as pizza monsters, even in like Turtles in Time, they're referred to as pizza monsters, and the episode's called Case of the Killer Pizzas. So like I always thought as a kid, like, are they part pizza? But like when watching it as an adult, it's like, oh, they're not. They're just aliens from Dimension X. But like I remember as a kid always thinking like they're red and yellow because they're like sauce and cheese and stuff. Like I thought they were literally pizza monsters.
So that's the one cool thing from Shredder's Revenge is they are made out of pizza in that. And I don't think we ever talked about that when we talked about that video game, but yeah, that was one of the little touches they put in that I really appreciated from that.
That's what I always imagined, like if they were to make, because I always thought the exact same thing you said, like they should have had a Playmates toy back in the day of those guys. I always thought since they did the crazy sculpts, have like some areas where it's like melty cheese, their skin, and then there's like some pepperonis on the side of their head or something, and like some mushrooms or like olives or something on them. Like they could do crazy like designs like that. But yeah, it's an awesome episode. All right, my number 3 is New York's Shiniest with Rex 1. Rex 1, like you said, he's one of my favorite side characters. There's just something about him that's just, he's just funny. And like you said, like he is goofy. The whole tongue thing is funny and all. But there's also just always something inherently funny about a character who takes themselves so seriously. And like he's this ridiculous character. He's this big robot cop. And he's not like, you know, RoboCop, which is clearly what it's like a parody of. It's like RoboCop. He's dressed like, you know, like just a New York policeman, but like he's a giant robot and he's goofy as hell, but he thinks he's like super serious and stuff. And that just makes it even funnier. It makes you wonder like how aware he is, like how self-aware he is, because he is dating Irma at the end of the episode. So it's like, did he choose that, or is she just taking advantage of the fact that he can't make decisions? So like, I don't know. It's just weird. Like he seems like he has a bit of a personality, but yeah, I just always loved him. I always thought he was fun. Again, like the Crooked Ninja Turtle gang, like you said, the evil Rexes were always cool. The color scheme was just badass. If NECA doesn't make that a figure, that's just like a missed opportunity.
It's got to be on deck. It's an easy repaint for them.
Yeah. So. Again, like I would love to see them show up as like a really like tough enemy in like the video games, like in the beat 'em up. They have a bunch of Rexes, and I know the vintage ones weren't 100% based on the cartoon show, but like if they did a sequel to Shredder's Revenge or like a DLC pack, I would love to see Crooked Ninja Turtle gang and Rex 1 guys show up, or I guess those wouldn't be Rex 1. That would be like Rex 2, 3, 4, 5, and all that. But yeah, it's almost like RoboCop 2, where the original RoboCop fights RoboCop 2, which is like he looks totally different, but it's like here's the evil version of you, and now you have to fight him and stuff. Right. So yeah, it's again, there's not too much to say that you didn't say, but I just think it's fun. Speaking actually, of James Rolfe, he pointed out like an inconsistency that I never noticed in the episode until he pointed out. It's like, how did I never notice this? We're like, there's like crazy time paradoxes and like characters appearing in multiple places at once going on that I never noticed until he pointed it out. I'm like, oh shit, he's right. None of this makes sense. but it's still a great episode. I don't know, like none of that bothers me.
I don't even remember him saying that. I don't remember. I'm gonna have to double watch that one again to try to figure that out.
I don't think that was in his retrospective video. He did a video that was like top 10 turtle flubs. Okay. And it was like mess ups in the cartoon. And I think that's when he covers that one.
You talked about Rex being like kind of self-aware and stuff like that. And I almost feel like, because at first he's kind of programmed to protect April, right? Because I don't know if she's the first person that turns him on or whatever. And then maybe that's just gets switched over to Irma, and maybe they do like reprogram a little bit. His character, like, he's kind of almost like a precursor to the Tick cartoon a little bit. Like when he first jumps out of the building and he falls like waist deep into the concrete, like that's very like, it reminds me of the Tick cartoon for sure. The other thing that I forgot to talk about when I was talking about it is when he gets all the other tapes put back in him to get his memory or whatever they tried doing with it, and he has like the Three Stooges stuff in there. I love the Three Stooges as a kid, so I just love that he did that as well.
Yeah, I love the Stooges. Yeah, it's funny that you're saying like, I don't know why he's following Irma, because April he turned him on. It's like, well, maybe Irma turned him on more.
Right? Hey, there you go.
Yeah, but yeah, he's a great character. Like, I never would have even made that Tick comparison, but you're right. That kind of like super strong, super like well equipped to deal with the situation superhero, but they're like kind of a big bumbling doofus and they don't even realize it, kind of. So that was a funny ass cartoon, by the way. But
I just started watching it again on Saturday mornings. It made it back into my rotation. So
yeah. I need to revisit it at some point. I rewatched the first episode like years ago. I just remember cracking up. There's the dude who's like the spoof of the Punisher, and he's always crying.
Right, dude. Yeah, it's so good. Because again, watching it after all this time, I'd really like to read the comics, but they're kind of not the easiest to get a hold of.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, it's awesome. It's hilarious, and it holds up very well. So yeah, I recommend. It's on Hulu if you have that. So
I know a lot of people didn't like it. Not to get too off topic about the Tick, but I know a lot of people didn't like it. But there was like a live action show in the early 2000s that I just thought was actually really funny. For the
There's
Tick.
two of them, and I can't remember because
there's one on Amazon that's more recent, but there was one on
and that one. It's actually like hardcore graphic violence, which really threw me off. And I watched the first couple episodes, and I kind of just fell off. I don't know why I did, but yeah.
No, the one in the 2000s is more of a sitcom. I can get like it didn't weigh in as much on the superhero aspects. Like that's why people didn't like it, but I thought it was funny for what it was. But
all right, so on to my runner-up here. So got season 1, episode 2, Enter the Shredder.
That's a badass episode.
So so it's your first appearance of Krang. It's your first appearance of mutated Bebop and Rocksteady, and then you get a very, very, very cool fight, which it's kind of a bummer that it's against robots, but it's against really cool robots. So like all these giant, ridiculous machines and stuff like that. And like I said earlier, Michelangelo somehow just beats the crap out of them with his nunchucks and they just explode. And Raphael cuts the wings off that thing with the size and they're not even a sharp weapon or anything. Yeah. So there is some silly stuff that goes on, but it's really cool action, especially compared to what happens later. But it's really cool how you get your Bebop and Rocksteady origin and stuff. And it's kind of a bummer that they almost immediately make them doofuses right off the bat. But it's cool when they actually do like pop back up to the surface and they do kind of like get a hold of the turtles and actually seem like a bit of a threat, but then they just get covered. I can't remember if that's when they get put in the jail.
They put in
back in the pen. Or if they get covered in the concrete at that time. I can't remember which one it is.
They get put in the zoo cage.
Yeah, they get put back in the zoo cage. Yeah, it's just cool. We get all these origins. And first Roadkill Rodney, too. This is the first time he appears. So you get a lot of characters that are big staples introduced in this episode. And it follows the first episode, which you can probably guess might be coming here in a little bit. Yeah, I just really, really, really like that first season. It's a really good episode. It just continues the action from the first episode. And it also brings in their quadruple bunk beds for the first time too, which is funny because in the episode before it definitely shows their bedrooms and stuff like where April's sleeping. So I just always thought it was funny whenever they threw in the quadruple bunk beds. Again, simple episode, not super thick with plot or anything like that, but just all part of that first arc that I really love.
Yeah, that's definitely a super classic episode. I remember watching that one very early on. Although I have like a weird, like, false memory about it that somehow my brother shared also, where we remembered Bebop and Rocksteady being mutated in the zoo, and you see it happen. Like, there's a rhino behind Rocksteady in a cage and a warthog behind Bebop. None of that happens. But
yeah, clearly.
For some reason, we both remembered it that way. I don't know if one of us said it. Maybe it was one of those 5 a.m. episodes. But no, one of us maybe misremembered it, and the other one, their memory was so foggy they just overrode the memory with that or something, or I don't know. But yeah, it's a classic episode though. It's great. My number 2 is Return of the Technodrome, which is the finale of season 2. Yep. And it really kind of is like the finale of the show. It could have been a final episode. Like, it's almost written like it's the final episode. It seems like the thought process was like, okay, if we don't get more seasons of the show, we can end it right here. Yeah. Because you have like everything happens, and like the majority of the stuff I love is in like the final third of the episode, where the Turtles and Splinter like infiltrate the Technodrome. They find the Technodrome underground, and they go into the Technodrome, and they fight Bebop and Rocksteady and everybody, and foot soldiers and all. But then Splinter goes off to fight Shredder, and they have like the Star Wars kind of moment where Shredder's like, walking down the hallways with all his foot soldiers, and he's like, I sense the presence of my old, like, enemy. Right. Like, let me go face him. And he walks off. It's like the exact quote Darth Vader says. And then they meet on the bridge, like just like Vader and Obi-Wan. But it's such an epic battle. And then it even kind of turns into like the end of Temple of Doom at the end, where like the bridge collapses on like either side and stuff. And it's such a cool, like, explosive finish, literally, because they blow up the Technodrome. Right. And like Shredder, Krang, Bebop, and Rocksteady are all in the Technodrome. So like, if season 3 never happened, you just assume those dudes were dead. Like, they're just like that. The whole Technodrome just blows up. I don't remember, actually. There might be a little tease that they're still around at the end, but actually I don't think there is. But yeah, it's just like, it's one of the most epic finales they ever had, because the first 3 seasons, they always wanted to do a finale. The 3rd season had like 3 episodes, like the big something and like so on. For me, season 2, that was just like the first time they did like a big finale that wasn't part of the original season 1 arc. And it was so big. It was hard to like ever top that again. I think season 3 is when the Technodrome comes to New York City and starts like trashing everything and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. For me, the Return of the Technodrome is just like the greatest finale episode they had in later seasons.
It kind of makes sense what you're saying too, because season 1, 5 episodes, it was a mini series, pretty much, really short. Season 2 was like, okay, this miniseries was good, give us a little more. But it wasn't until season 3 where they hit syndication and they're like, okay, this is a hit. Like, this is going to go forever and be gangbusters. So you're right. At the end of season 2, they could have kind of tied up that bow right there if they didn't get anything else. Because it does feel very contained too. Like season 1, I mean, it kind of starts off with like, it tries to have that serialization with the eye of, I always forget it, the eye of Sarnak, yeah.
I think it is.
And they kind of abandon that, but it definitely just does wrap it up, and it feels like a very epic way to where later their season finales are almost like a spoof of that. To where I can't remember if it's season 4 or 5 or 6 or which one it even is, where they're like, find the Technodrome, infiltrate, blah blah blah. They like make fun of it themselves, but that's definitely the one that really like sets that up for sure.
Yeah, they take it like very seriously. It like. Yeah. Watching that as a little kid, you feel like you're watching like any crazy action movie. You feel like you're watching Total Recall or something. Like you're watching some like epic action sci-fi adventure. Yeah, it's awesome. I think definitely you can see like season 3, they realized they were renewed because like, all right, make 60 episodes or 40 episodes, whatever it is. Season 2, I don't know if they knew it was popular, but so many cartoons in the 80s had 1 season and then they were done.
Yeah.
So like even popular ones, even ones people know, like Brave Star and stuff, like I had a season. So
yeah,
I think Silverhawks only had a season, I think. So it's like they might not have known that they were gonna get like a whole show out of this. Silverhawks might have had it too, but I don't know. So like it seems like they were setting up like, okay, if we have to end it, this is how it's gonna end. And season 3 is when they realized like, okay, we got these kids by the balls. Like they love our show. So yeah, I love that episode.
So honorable mentions. So one of them we already covered. So I would say Sky Turtles would have been my hard number 11 for sure. And then the other two were the 2 episodes from season 1 that didn't make it in my top 10. So think about Rats and then Shredder and Shredder and Splintered. I love season 1. They're some of my favorite episodes. It was almost, at one time I thought maybe all 5 of them were going to make it in my top 10, but then once I realized how many favorite episodes I had, I was surprised that 2 of them even got the boot. But that first season, just super special. I just really love all those episodes. It's just a great mini series, a great start to finish arc, the way everything goes, but each episode is still pretty awesome on its own. And then Sky Turtles, we kind of already touched on everything I liked about that episode. Really awesome episode, really fun, and just one of my most memorable ones from my childhood. So my number 1, and I feel like you could probably figure it out by now.
I think I know.
First episode, Turtle Track, season 1, episode 1. It just is such a great start to this show. Such a good introduction. It's cool how it shows the turtles just kicking Bebop and Rocksteady's gang's ass before you even see them. And then you kind of just see them walk forward. And I really like the way they're drawn in this episode. It's even different than episode 2, I feel like. Like they have that sharp line on their nose. And it's just very, very, very different. But all the action scenes in this are just so good. Like the first time they fight the foot soldiers and they realize they're robots, like that's probably my favorite fight scene in the entire series. It's just so cool. It's so fun. And they have all these other like just really stupid things that happen in this episode. Like going to the Ninja Pizzeria, and it's the first time you realize, I guess even before that, they eat their weird pizza for breakfast. You get that cool escape scene from the building where it starts filling up with water and all the foot soldiers are leaving and they have to get up to the roof and they get out of the building. And then one of the most iconic characters that I feel like is a deep cut but iconic at the same time is the granny with the machine gun. Like the first interaction they have with any people other than other than April, the first person that sees them, they just freaking pull out this granny with the machine gun, and it's just such a good, memorable character.
It reminds me of the granny with the machine gun from the old Super Mario Brothers movie, who's like, "Give me all your Koopa coins" or whatever. But yeah, honestly, that fight with the first fight with the foot soldiers is probably the most well animated and like badass fight in the entire series. Actually, it is a perfect start. Actually, it's funny you mentioned like the hard line in the nose. I guess this episode had such an impact on me. When I was a kid, anytime I drew the turtles like crayon or whatever, I always gave them that hard line in the middle of their nose, actually. Like it always seemed like, oh, that's a detail they should have.
I mean, I don't really have a whole lot else to say on it. Super iconic episode, and it's just strongest memories with it. It's probably the episode that I watched the most as a kid. And again, I feel like it's objectively the best, and it is my favorite.
Okay, I have 5 honorable mentions. 3 of them are, contestants for possibly being on my list. 2 of them are just on there because they were just epic moments for me as a kid. So the 3 that almost made it on the list are Pizza by the Shred, which we already talked about. Casey Jones, Outlaw Hero, because it didn't make it to the top because Casey Jones is just not really like a significant character in this iteration of the Turtles, which is weird, but it's such a great episode. And Casey's just such a maniac. He's hilarious.
Right.
Like, I love when he has like all those like one-liners he says to like all the punks he's beating up in the sporting goods store and everything at the beginning. And I just love his voice. He's doing like exaggerated Clint Eastwood, like sleazeball when he's talking to everyone. It's just funny because, he's like the human hero, but he's like 20 times crazier than the giant turtle. like they're like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? But it's definitely not the most interesting introduction for Casey. Like I like it much more when Casey and Raph have a dynamic like the comics and then the 2003 cartoon and the movie and everything. But it's still a great episode, so I felt like it was worthy of being on honorable mentions. Same with Enter the Fly. That's the one where Baxter gets mutated for the first time. It's awesome. I have all the memories of him getting mutated in the final scene where he gets like sent into like whatever limbo or whatever. Those are all super memorable, but the rest of the episode isn't like particularly super memorable, so it didn't make my list. Then the other 2 that I have on that are just because I remember them being a big deal when I was a kid was Michelangelo Meets Mondo Gecko, because I loved Mondo Gecko as a kid. Yeah. And for some reason,
that was going to be one that was going to be in your top 10 for sure.
For some reason, as a kid, I thought it was a 2-parter, but it wasn't. It was just one episode. As a kid, everything feels a lot longer and more epic. So I thought there was like so much time of like not knowing Mondo Gecko was a gecko, but it's like the second time we see him, he just pulls off his trench coat and he's a gecko. But yeah, that one, it's not a great episode. That was season 5. That's when like the quality started to dip a little bit. But as a kid, I loved it. And Planet of the Turtleoids, which is a 2-parter, which is the Ground Chuck and Dirtbag and Chrome Dome episode, because it's not that great when you go back and watch it now. Like it's little more than a toy commercial, but as a kid, it was like, it felt like I was watching a movie. So it was like this epic moment. They were hyping it like for a while. And then when it came on, I remember like we all watched it in the living room together. It was shown at prime time. It wasn't shown like when the episodes were normally shown. So like my whole family watched it with me. We're probably like, what the fuck am I watching? Like my mom was probably like, what the fuck is this? But we loved it. Yeah, I just remember that having a big impact on me. But again, watching it today, which is, it's hard to find. It's actually probably the hardest episode of Turtles to track down. But it does not hold up. Anyway, my number 1, I'm going to be a big fucking cheater here. And I'm going to say my number 1 is The Epic Begins, which is not the name of any one episode. It's the name of the first VHS tape that was released. That was season 1, just packaged onto a VHS tape. So my number 1 is season 1, because I can't pick season 1 episodes apart from each other. So I'm just going to say all 5 episodes tie for the number 1 space for me.
Dude, I'm not even kidding. I almost was going to do that. I almost was going to do the same thing, because like you, I love the first season so much, and I do feel like it is just one, like each episode is kind of episodic. Like I can definitely break them up in my mind, but it all feels just like one smooth story to me.
Yeah, it definitely feels like I can't have one without the other. Yeah. It's kind of like when I say my top 5 favorite movies, I say my number 4 favorite movie is the Universal Monsters, and it's like, well, that's like 50 fucking movies, but I'm like, yeah, but I can't have the Wolfman without Dracula. I can't have Frankenstein without the Invisible Man. So it's like, that's how I feel about the first one. It's like in the first season, it's just like, I can't have any of them without the others. They're a complete package. Like we keep saying, they're basically a mini series. So the same way people would call, Stephen King's It from 1990 a movie, even though it was technically a 2-night miniseries, I call this an episode. So, for me, it's those 5 episodes. I know in the actual VHS tape, The Epic Begins, they took out one of them and then took out Think About Rats. I believe I never had the VHS tape, but I believe I've heard they took out every scene involving Baxter, weirdly enough.
Interesting.
So they just pretend Baxter doesn't exist in that.
Okay, because I would say that's kind of the episode that plays the least into the overall arc, but at the same time it introduces the Mousers, which is a pretty big deal, I feel like. And
it's the most like Baxter centric episode.
Yeah.
So and Baxter's such a huge deal in season 2. He's like, we always think of the bad guys as Shredder, Bebop, Rocksteady, and Krang, but for most of season 2 it's Shredder and Baxter.
Yeah,
like
Baxter's hanging out. He's like his sidekick a lot for sure.
Yeah. So it's it was important to set him up, because that's more true to the Mirage comics. Is like the main, not that Baxter's working for Shredder, but that Baxter and Shredder, they're the 2 first villains we meet in the Mirage comics. So like issue 1 is Shredder, issue 2 is Baxter. So I can see where they were coming from, but Bebop and Rocksteady were so much more popular, I guess, that they kind of took over. But yeah, season 1's awesome. Like you said, episode 2, I love that episode so much, where it sets up Bebop and Rocksteady. I have a video on my channel. It's probably my favorite video on my channel, actually, is where I hypothetically talk about my dream Ninja Turtle movie. Like if I can make my ultimate Ninja Turtle dream movie. And then I did like, if I made sequels, and I just get little ideas for sequels. But most of my movie is like the 1990 movie mixed with the first 2 episodes of the cartoon show. So it's like, I kind of copied all of that stuff into there, because I'm like, my ultimate dream Ninja Turtles would be my favorite 2 iterations of the Turtles, which is season 1 of the 87 show and the 1990 movie. Like I can't have the introduction of the Turtles without, like what you said, them like kind of stepping out of the light, and then like you see them after they kicked a bunch of ass and stuff. Like there's just so many cool introductions in that first season, and just awesome ways they do things. Like you said, awesome fighting scenes. and it does take itself a little more seriously. It's still funny, it's still for kids, but it took itself a little more seriously. And yeah, it is like almost like if you just watch that as an animated movie, like you just watch season 1, it holds up pretty well, actually.
Yeah, I think so too. Because again, the last episode that we really didn't touch on individually, you get an awesome fight between Splinter and Shredder, and then you get your introduction to Krang's android body, and it only does this once, but it blows up into that giant form, which is pretty cool. And then the turtles get inside of it. So yeah, just so much memorable scenes in these first 5 episodes. They're so iconic, so good. And I definitely don't feel like you're wrong for making all of that your number 1 pick at all.
It is cheating, but yeah, I couldn't decide. The one thing I always found weird about Krang's body growing, though, is why does Krang grow as well?
Yeah, his actual, I've always wondered that too. Yep.
Because they're like, oh, the suit's made out of this special material. The girl's like, well, Krang's not. He's a freaking brain.
Right?
So.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great episode, though. And then, yeah, just the whole scene of them going into the body and stuff was so cool. Just like everything about that. There's so much like just action and crazy off the wall ideas for adventure. Like you had like crazy adventures going on in every Saturday morning cartoon, but like how many of them had a kaiju sized robot man with a brain in his stomach that you have to travel inside of to destroy from the inside? Like there's just so much crazy shit going on in that first season, like rock soldiers with a machine that makes it snow and all this stuff. And it's like they come from another dimension where a hot rod car from the 50s comes out with a bunch of greaser elves. It's like, what the fuck is this show?
Yeah,
it's
man.
awesome.
I mean, they just came out swinging. Like I said, ideas from everywhere. Like it's all over the place, but it all comes together to work so well together.
Yeah, it's just a masterpiece. I think season 1 is a masterpiece. Going back and watching it, you can definitely tell, like, watching season 1, you're like, I get why this blew up immediately and, like, just took over Saturday mornings. And because it's like, was that when it was on Saturday morning? That was actually when it was being shown in the afternoons. I don't remember. But I can see why it took over the cartoon world in the 80s. Because, like, I love 80s cartoons, but Ninja Turtles was, like, a clear step above the rest of them with that first season.
Hear my dogs running around like they gotta take a piss. You got any other thoughts?
No, that's it. That's both of our top 10s for the classic Fred Wolf cartoon. And
all right, I'm excited to do another top 10. This is a lot of fun. It's definitely gonna be our longest episode for sure. But
that's what I was saying.
A lot of fun.
There was another top 10 idea that I had that you were like, I don't know if we could go a whole hour. I'm like, top 10s are going to take a long time.
Yeah. Now I see that. So yeah, we could probably spin something out of nothing on these ones. So yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Let us know your top 10 episodes. And yeah, we'll hopefully we're not liars. We got Chris Fawcett coming on episode 11 if everything works out. So yeah. Catch you guys in a couple weeks.
Peace.
Peace.